Chapter 342. Ziyi's eyes became confused when she heard these shocking words. She seemed to be imagining the scene of the fierce battle. Xianxia was shocked and excited, but he didn't think it was strange. Bai Changqun once told him that he had even killed immortals in the upper world, so it was normal for him to have no opponents in the cultivation world. Although those people were forced to make a poison oath, they didn't give up. The poison oath said that they couldn't intervene in person, but it didn't say that they couldn't let others intervene on their behalf. Therefore, the masters of the soul formation stage from various countries sent their disciples or subordinates to Wuxia. However, in the eyes of the Wuxia cultivation world, they were the orthodox cultivation world, and everyone was responsible for defending and protecting their own land. A group of foreign cultivators had no choice but to join forces to gain a foothold in the Wuxia cultivation world. So they found the father and son of the Yan family, who were attacked by the righteous and evil sects. The father and son of the Yan family were in danger, so they were happy to have help from a group of strong cultivators. As Nongzhu spoke, she suddenly said with a teasing smile, "You Qinchou, I heard that the father and son of the Yan clan were forced into a corner by you. That's why they became enemies with the righteous and demonic Dao." Ziyi looked at him curiously and wondered why it had anything to do with him. Xianxia was thinking about what the enchantress of Allure said a few days ago. It turned out that there was a reason behind those people's arrival. But after hearing Nongzhu's words, his face suddenly became serious and he denied flatly, "Slander, this is pure slander. In fact, the father and son of the Yan family have been enemies with the righteous and evil sects for a long time. I'm just too upright and I really can't stand such despicable behavior, so I revealed the truth." Nongzhu smiled and said, "I don't know whether you're upright or not. Anyway, I only know that many cultivators call you the scum of the cultivation world. I guess that once you showed up, many defenders wanted to kill you, especially the Daoist sect. I heard that you killed the son of the head of their sect. Plus, the Daoist sect was probably going crazy at that time. Could be said that they were humiliated by you, so they sent a large number of people and almost turned the Wuxia cultivation world upside down. But even I didn't expect that you would hide in the demon ghost region and become old Bai's disciple. Who would have thought that? No wonder I couldn't find you anywhere." Although Ziyi rarely interfered with the matters of the outside world of cultivation, she still knew about some of the higher-ranked sections. This fellow in front of her actually dared to kill the son of the Deluo sect master, which was ranked second in the righteous Dao. Xianxia's expression is a little unnatural, but he still quibbles. "These are all rumors, it's not worth believing." Nongzhu shook her head and laughed. "Look at this. The cultivators from the other countries were forced to go because of your master, and the Yan father and son were forced into a corner by you. Now that these two groups of people are together and Old Man Bai has become your master and disciple, this mess. I just realized that you two master and disciple are really a perfect match. Both of you are extremely daring people. Where there is a cause, there is an effect. But what does that have to do with me? You two master and disciple should solve the problem yourselves. What right does Old Man Bai have to drag me into this? This is outrageous." "Master, what does Old Man Bai want you to do?" Ziyi asked. Nongzhu frowned and said, "The cultivation world of Wuxia is undoubtedly the most powerful country in the entire cultivation world. Although the other countries are not as powerful as Wuxia individually, if they unite they will definitely be more powerful than Wuxia. Usually these hundreds of countries can't unite, but the temptation of the star bead is too great, and Wuxia is too xenophobic, so they have no choice but to unite. This time, those who came to meet with the Yan father and son are only the vanguard. Once the war starts, strong reinforcements from other countries will come continuously. Although Old Man Bai was in the demon region, deep down he saw himself as a part of Wuxia. However, when he forced everyone to swear an oath in the East Sea, he had also said that he would not interfere in this matter personally, or the oath would be voided. Now, what was originally a matter between soul-forming stage cultivators has become a matter of the whole cultivation world. Because of Old Man Bai, the whole cultivation world is going to be in chaos, and the cultivation world of Wuxia has become the target of public criticism. It's in a precarious situation. The three of them had their own thoughts. After a long time, Ziyi suddenly asked, "Master, did you take the oath at that time?" Hearing this, Nongzhu's face showed a trace of pride and she said, "Based on my relationship with Old Man Bai, he won't make things difficult for me. Ziyi, don't get the wrong idea. It's not because I didn't take the oath, but because he wants me to solve this problem." Even if he wants me to do that, I won't do it. Once I do that, I will become the enemy of all the soul-forming stage cultivators in the world. At that time, old man Bai can just leave, and I don't have the ability to fight against all the masters in the world alone. I can live for at least 700 or 800 years, and I don't want to die so early. After a pause, she shook her head and said with a bitter smile, "But I was still tricked by this old man. Some time ago he came to me and said that this problem was caused by him and he had to find a way to solve it. Otherwise, once the cultivation world of Wuxia collapses, the armies of the secular world from other countries will come one after another. At that time the Wuxia Empire will be in chaos and the common people will be in deep trouble. I don't know how many people will die because of this, so he has to find a way to protect the cultivation world of Wuxia. I know he's a proud and aloof person. Although he's invincible, he doesn't have many friends and I'm his only friend. He's looking for me because he needs my help, but as I said before, it's impossible for me to personally intervene in this matter. So I asked him, what are you going to do now that things have come to this? Xianxia, do you know what your master said? Damn it. What do you mean by that? Don't tell me you want me to go against the whole world. Isn't that courting death? I won't do it even if you beat me to death. Xianxia shook his head decisively and said, this is a matter between masters like you. I am just at the gathering vitality stage and I can't guess what you are talking about. His words first removed himself from the problem, but he might not get what he wanted. Nongzhu was stunned. She looked at him with a strange expression and continued. Your master said that he has been meditating on the Great Tao for many years, and he seemed to understand something by watching the stars at night. He found the person who can solve this problem. He hopes that I will send my disciple, Ze, to help that person for the sake of our friendship. Master, did Senior Bai specifically ask me to participate in this matter? Ze asked in surprise. It seemed that it was a great honor to be called Bai Changchun. Xianxia glanced at her and thought, idiot. Nongzhu rolled her eyes at Ze and snorted, I refused at that time. Isn't that asking my disciple to die? Who would have thought that the old man would bully me for being soft-hearted? He said that if I didn't help him he wouldn't care if he would be punished by the heavens. He would slaughter all the deity transformation cultivators in the world, including me. I was shocked at that time. I knew that since he dared to say that, he would definitely do it. I had no choice but to ask him, can the person you mentioned really solve this problem? He said yes, so I gritted my teeth and said yes. After the matter was settled, he told me that he would ask that person to come to me in person, and asked me to tell him about it. He also asked Ze to go with him to carry out the task. Speaking of this, Nongzhu suddenly pointed at Xianxia's nose and flew into a rage. Damn it, I thought it was some great figure that could attract old Bai's attention. I wanted to meet him, but it turned out to be you, Xianxia. You are the scum of the cultivation world. As a cultivator in the nascent soul stage, how could you, a cultivator in the nascent soul stage, protect the cultivation world of Wuxia? How could you run away? Not only the father and son of the Yan family will not let you go, but many cultivators in the cultivation world of Wuxia will also want to kill you. How could you protect them? It's good enough that you can protect yourself. Asking you to take my disciple out, isn't that a gamble with your life? I finally understand now. Old Bai was afraid that you would die too quickly, so he took my disciple out to be your bodyguard, old bastard. It was probably because he was angry that a handsome old man like him was spouting vulgarities. Chapter 343. Go ahead. Go ahead. I don't want to do that glorious and great thing. If I have to sacrifice, I have to make it worthwhile, right? Do you want me to shed my blood for the world? I have nothing better to do. What does the world have to do with me? Who would do something without benefits? Xianxia murmured to himself. He lowered his head and let him scold him. However, there was one thing that he also understood. It seemed that this guy knew who he was the moment he heard his name. He was beating around the bush to tease him. In Ziyi's strange eyes, Nongzhu seemed to find that she had lost the demeanor of a master. She said to Xianxia embarrassedly, tell me what you think. I can see that you don't want to go either. As long as you refuse, I don't think old Bai has anything to say. Then this matter will naturally be settled. Forget it. You don't dare to stand up for me. Do you think I'm an idiot? Old Bai is like a butcher when he gets angry. I'm just a promising young man. I can't even stand a chance against him. Xianxia coughed and sternly said, since it's an order from my master, how can I not obey as his disciple? I can't do such a thing. Yu Qianchou is willing to sacrifice my life to relieve master's worries, even if I die 10,000 times. His expression showed that he was resolute to die. His righteous words made Ziyi's disdainful look disappear. A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the ocean. It was hard to understand. Nongzhu winked and twitched her face. She said, hee hee. What a filial disciple. I think the dead headmaster Ong Kwang-tsung will be so angry that he will come back to life after hearing your words. Yu Qianchou turned a deaf ear to these mocking words and acted as if he hadn't heard them at all. Instead he said, Senior, I believe that my master has other arrangements. He wouldn't let me and Lady Ziyi go into danger alone. In fact, he felt that the name Nongzhu was not a good one. Usually when he called a senior he would add the honorific surname in front of the word. For example, Senior Zhang, Senior Lu and so on. As for Nongzhu, if you give him an honorific surname he will become Senior Nongzhu. Senior Nong? Yu Qianchou couldn't bring himself to call him that, so he just called him Senior. Old man Bai has other arrangements? Nongzhu's eyes lit up and she asked suspiciously, How do you know? Did he tell you something? I didn't say anything, but think about it, Senior. Yu Qianchou explained, although it's not convenient for my master to do it, I can ask someone else to do it. As the torture master of the realm of demons and ghosts, he has thousands of demons and ghosts under his command. Just the ones at the final stage of crossing the heavenly tribulation are frightening. If my master can let me bring them out, I'm confident that I can defeat them no matter how many cultivators from different countries come. Nongzhu looked him up and down and said disdainfully, What kind of sweet dream are you having? Was there something wrong with his brain? You're Bai Chongqun's disciple. How can you release the demons and ghosts in the realm of demons and ghosts at will? If your master had a choice, he would rather destroy the cultivation world of Wuxia than release a single demon or ghost. Does it matter? At worst, we can drive them back to the realm of demons and ghosts. Yu Qianchou said disapprovingly. Nongzhu looked into the distance with confusion in her eyes, as if she recalled something from the past. After a pause she shook her head and sighed, You don't have to mention it again. Your master won't do it. It involves the oath made by the ancient god of war, demon monarch of swords, when he took over the realm of demons and ghosts. Ziyi asked curiously, Master, do you know about it? Nongzhu looked at her disciple and sighed. She said with a wry smile, If it weren't for my laziness and unwillingness to bear the heavy responsibility, the realm of demons and ghosts of this generation would not be me instead of old Bai. Speaking of it, I tricked old Bai and trapped him in the realm of demons and ghosts for more than 1,000 years. Otherwise, with his talent he would have ascended to the immortal realm long ago, and the current situation would not have happened. Speaking of it, it has something to do with me. I'm the one who wronged him first. As he spoke he looked at Yu Qianchou and sighed, Forget it. Since you are determined to follow master's orders, then I have nothing else to say. Just take it as I owed old man Bai back then. Today I will return it to him. Yu Qianchou had heard about this from Bai Chongqun. He knew that Nongzhu should have been the realm of demons and ghosts of this generation, but he didn't know what had happened during this period. Yu Qianchou couldn't help but blame himself for talking too much when he saw that Nongzhu had agreed to the matter that she had opposed so firmly because of his words. Previously, Nongzhu had wanted him to stand up and refuse. Yu Qianchou had said that he was righteous, but he had the same idea. He was eager for Nongzhu to stand up and refuse. But he had thought it through. It didn't matter. I'll do what I should do when I go out. I can't be so stupid as to hit a stone with an egg. Getting rich quietly was the way of the king. Yu Qianchou, come with me. I have something to say to you. Nongzhu said hello to him and walked to the purple bamboo forest outside the courtyard. Yu Qianchou was startled. What kind of words couldn't be said here? He looked at Ziyi, who had turned her face to the side. He immediately understood that Nongzhu wanted to have a private conversation with him and didn't want her disciple to hear it. He was a little curious, so he quickly followed her out. The two stopped on the path of the purple bamboo forest one after the other. A halo expanded from Nongzhu's body and quickly wrapped Yu Qianchou in it. Nongzhu turned around and asked, What are you going to do this time? Damn. What's so mysterious that they even need to set up a bounded domain to prevent others from eavesdropping? Yu Qianchou looked at the halo that surrounded them and said in surprise, Senior, do you have any good ideas? He had never thought of working hard, so he naturally couldn't tell her any plans. So he simply pushed the question back. As expected, Nongzhu stared at him and said, "Should I ask you or you ask me? Since you're ready to follow the master's order, don't you have any plans? I don't think you're a person who is in a hurry to die." Yu Qianzhou put on a serious look again and replied, "I really don't have any plans. After leaving the South Sea, I'll immediately go back to Shuntian Island to ask my master. I'll do whatever my master says without any second thoughts." He added in his heart, "If you want to get the truth out of me, just wait. God knows if you'll sell me out later. You and Old Bai have been friends for more than 1,000 years, but I've only known you for a few days. Less than a day. Yu Qianzhou, don't play this game with me. In terms of cultivation, I'm not as good as your master, but in terms of judgment, I'm not in the mood to cultivate. I've wandered in the secular world for 1,000 years, and I've seen all kinds of people. I can tell at a glance that you're not a good person. I'm afraid you're thinking in your heart that you'll do whatever you want to do when you go out. You're still trying to hide it from me." Nongzhu really saw through his thoughts at a glance. But so what if she saw through it? Yu Qianzhou was also a rogue in his previous life, so he was thick-skinned. What's more, even if others could guess what he was thinking, there was no evidence. Yu Qianzhou waved his hands and said, No, you've wronged me. I'll never have that kind of thought even if you beat me to death. I've never had that kind of thought. Really, I've never had that kind of thought from the beginning to the end." He was very sincere. "You really haven't?" Nongzhu looked at him seriously and sneered, "Then swear to me now. If you've ever had such a thought, curse yourself to die a horrible death as soon as you leave the South Sea purple bamboo forest. Swear now." "Swear to your grandma." Yu Qianzhou cursed in his heart. How could he swear to her? Cultivators' swears would come true. Although he had never seen anyone do it, everyone said so. Who would dare to joke with their lives? Yu Qianzhou smiled awkwardly, "You're being suspicious. I'm open-minded, so I don't need to swear. Open-minded my ass." Nongzhu immediately gave Yu Qianzhou a burst chestnut with her flute. Her cultivation was high and her attack was fast. Yu Qianzhou didn't even have a chance to dodge. His forehead hurt. He couldn't close his mouth even though he was gritting his teeth. Nongzhu poked his forehead with her flute and warned, "It's not wrong for you to think like that. You should do that when you go out. You can't do things that you know will lead to death. If you want to save the world, you have to protect your own life first. Otherwise, how can you save the world? Do you understand what I mean?" Yu Qianzhou covered his forehead and suddenly understood, but he still didn't want to leave any evidence in his words. He nodded repeatedly and said, "I won't forget your words. I will try my best to understand them." Nongzhu looked at him and kept shaking her head. She clicked her tongue and said, "It seems that I didn't misjudge you. You're really not a good guy. It's good. I'll be relieved to hand Zi over to you." Then she changed the topic and smiled sinisterly. "Zi can protect you when she goes out with you, but you can't let her be in danger. That girl is stubborn and easily stubborn. I warn you, even if you have to die, you have to die in front of her. Otherwise, I will find you and turn you into ashes even if you have to go to heaven or hell. There's one thing I won't hide from you. Zi is my disciple, but she is actually my daughter. Your master also knows this. You'd better be smart when you encounter something outside." "Ah." Yu Qianzhou was stunned and said in surprise, Who will protect who? That's for you to think about. Don't ask me." Nongzhu didn't care so much. She took the halo back into her body and gave him a fierce look. Then she walked straight back to Zi and told her something. Chapter 344. "I told you to listen to him and protect his safety, but you still have to put your own safety first. If it's too dangerous, with the transfiguration transposition art that I taught you, it shouldn't be a problem for you to escape alone." Bastard. As soon as Yu Qianzhou walked over, he heard Nongzhu teaching her disciple like this. It was obvious that she was telling her disciple to leave him behind and escape alone when she was in danger. Unfortunately, he had to lower his head under the eaves. Most importantly, he couldn't defeat her, and even her surname was Nongzhu. Yu Qianzhou stood aside obediently. Zi looked at Yu Qianzhou, who was standing obediently at the side, and said with a slight frown, "Master, if I escape alone, this Senior Bai asked me to protect him. If anything happens to him, how would I have the face to meet Senior Bai?" "Are you stupid?" Nongzhu's voice suddenly became louder. Then, thinking that this girl was stubborn, she calmly pointed at Yu Qianzhou and smiled. "See, don't look down on this guy. You don't know. I often travel outside, but I know that this guy killed Ong Kwang-tsung's grandfather and grandson. Even Ong Kwang-tsung at the last stage of passing calamity couldn't catch him. He killed the son of Daoist sect's leader, and the whole Daoist sect was looking for him. But he's still standing here safe and sound. You should know that he was only in the bearing essence stage at that time. In terms of escaping, he is better than you. I'll endure it. Yu Qianchou's eyebrows trembled. Nongzhu could not help but take a deep breath when she saw the hesitation on her disciple's face. She said calmly and patiently, "Ziyi, what do you think of old Bai's cultivation?" Ziyi's face turned serious. Elder Bai's power is profound. He is almost like an immortal on earth. No one in the cultivation world can defeat him. That's right. Why don't you think about it? How can a disciple taught by old man Bai be weak? If he really doesn't have any ability, why would old man Bai entrust such an important task to him? What's more, you've seen his fire spell. Although your cultivation is at the end of the crossing heavens test, do you think you can catch him? Nongzhu sighed. To be honest, I'm not worried about him, but you. Something happens to you, Master will be the only one left in the southern sea purple bamboo forest. How do you expect Master to live for the next few hundred years? Despicable and shameless. You're even playing the pity card. I'll continue to endure it. Yu Qianchou pretended not to hear anything and continued to maintain a straight face. As expected, Ziyi nodded emotionally and said, "Master, don't worry. I will definitely come back to serve you without a single scratch." Good. I'm relieved. Let him be then. Nongzhu waved her hand sadly and said goodbye. When she turned around, there were tears in her eyes. Nobody knew whether it was real or not. However, Yu Qianchou gave him a disdainful look. He judged others by himself and felt that this guy must be pretending. Ziyi knelt down and said, "Master, take care. I will come back as soon as possible after completing the task entrusted by Senior Bai. Do you think you're playing house? Come back as soon as possible?" Yu Qianchou also bowed to Ziyi. Nongzhu waved at them with her back facing them, indicating for them to leave. Yu Qianchou didn't want to stay any longer when he met his nemesis. He unsheathed the long sword on his back, jumped on the sword and jumped into the air. Ziyi flew directly after him and played a spell in the air. The two of them quickly went far away. Yu Qianchou's mood instantly became much better when he saw the vast ocean again. Who knew that Nongzhu's voice would suddenly resound in his ears? "Stinking brat, I'm warning you. Don't have any designs on my daughter just because she's beautiful. If I find out, I'll castrate you." The voice was so loud that it made his ears numb. He staggered and almost fell off the sword. Ziyi immediately noticed and asked, "Yu Qianchou, what's wrong?" "It's very windy," Yu Qianchou said awkwardly. He knew that the cultivation of the spirit-severing stage was very terrifying. They were not far from the South Sea purple bamboo forest, so he didn't dare to say anything bad about Nongzhu. Ziyi looked around in confusion. It seemed that she didn't notice how strong the wind was. She turned her head and asked, "Yu Qian, I rarely go out. Where are we going now? To the Wuxia cultivation world?" "No hurry. Let's go back to the demon ghost region to see my master first. We'll listen to his opinion first," Yu Qianchou said. Ziyi nodded heavily. Hearing that they were going to see Bai Chongqun, she became solemn as if she was going to see a saint. One of them rode on the sword and the other flew in the air. The woman followed beside Yu Qianchou and quickly flew to the demon ghost region. Yu Qianchou looked at Ziyi from time to time. He found that she and Nongzhu looked similar. However, it seemed that Ziyi didn't know that Nongzhu was her father. Otherwise, Nongzhu wouldn't have been so sneaky. There might be a big story behind it. They flew over the sea. 2 days later, they entered the gloomy and terrifying demon ghost region. From time to time, all kinds of demons and ghosts with ferocious faces flew over arrogantly. However, when they saw Yu Qianchou, their faces immediately changed. They all flashed to the side with their hands down and lowered their heads. Yu Qianchou was expressionless. He just flew forward as if he didn't see them. Ziyi looked at Yu Qianchou in surprise from time to time. She didn't expect him to be so powerful in the demon ghost region. On the 1,000-mile lake, once they arrived at Obedient Island, the two of them landed immediately. Lady Mu walked over and called out, "Mr." Her gaze then shifted to Ziyi and she bowed slightly in greeting. Yu Qianchou asked, "Is my master here?" Miss Mu nodded with a smile. They immediately walked to the center of the island. Zi looked back at Miss Mu and asked curiously, "Who is she? Why haven't I seen her before?" Obviously, it wasn't the first time she came to the Qianli Island. Yu Qianchou replied casually, "I'm new here." Bai Chongqun was still sitting with his eyes closed. Zi stood at the door obediently. Yu Qianchou came in and bowed, "Master, I'm back." Bai Chongqun slowly opened his eyes and stared at Yu Qianchou with a sharp gaze. Yu Qianchou felt a little uneasy as he stared at him. Bai Chongqun said, "Nongzhu has told you everything that happened, right?" "Yes." Yu Qianchou said respectfully. Bai Chongqun asked again, "Are you willing to do this?" "Faster, thief. Do I dare to refuse in front of you?" Yu Qianchou said, "I'll follow your arrangements." Bai Chongqun nodded and said to the door, "Ce, are you willing to help him?" Ce quickly came in respectfully and bowed, "Greetings, senior." "Ce is willing." "Then I won't say much. Yu Qianchou has a lot of experience in the cultivation world. I'll have to trouble you to help him for the time being. Ce will obey senior's orders. You can go now." Bai Chongqun said and slowly closed his eyes again. Yu Qianchou hurriedly asked, "Master, what should we do this time? Don't you have any instructions?" However, Bai Chongqun didn't say anything. After waiting for a while, the two had to leave obediently. Since they were told to leave now, they didn't dare to stay any longer. Not long after they arrived, they broke through the sky and left. Not long after they left, Yu Qianchou heard Bai Chongqun's voice again. "Ce is actually Nongzhu's biological daughter. Nongzhu treats her like a pearl in his palm. Now, among all the cultivators in the Huashan realm in the world, Nongzhu is the only one who can stay out of this, and he is the only one who can help you. However, he must have a lot of scruples. The reason why I want Ce to help you is not that she can help you much, but that Nongzhu will not leave her daughter alone. I think she will help you at the critical moment." "Faster, Ce. So that's how it is. They are really cunning. They are really experienced guys." Yu Qianchou glanced at Ze and continued to fly forward. Ze had no clue, so she could only follow him. Yu Qianchou had a toothache. With a follower following him, it would be difficult for him to teleport in the future. But to his relief, Bai Chongqun didn't give him any instructions. He could only understand that he could do whatever he wanted, which was exactly what he wanted. In that case, he didn't have to rush. He wanted to go to Yuji's place. He had been thinking about the legendary Black Fire and Resurrection Grass in the 9th Netherworld Cave. Chapter 345. The two of them flew out of the Valley of Evil Wind. Yu Qianchou landed on his sword and Zi followed. She asked in confusion, "Aren't we going to the Huaxia cultivation world? Why did you stop?" Yu Qianchou pointed at the valley where the phosphorescence was faintly discernible and said, "Looking for something to prepare for going to the Huaxia cultivation world." Hearing him say so, Zi didn't ask any more. She followed him into the valley against the gusts of Yin wind. Before they got close, they heard someone shouting in the depths of the Yin fog, "Who are you? How dare you break into my valley of evil wind? Stop and reply." "Yu Qianchou." Yu Qianchou shouted his name and continued to stride forward. The Yin fog in the valley rolled and a horn sounded. The Yin fog dispersed to both sides, and the stairs leading to the valley appeared. As the two of them approached, they saw a group of armored generals behind Yuji quickly coming to welcome them. They lined up in 2 rows and made way for them. They cupped their fists and said, "Greetings, mister." "Welcome, mister. I welcome you," Yuji said with a happy face. Suddenly, she noticed that there was a woman in purple beside him looking around curiously. She didn't look scared at all. Obviously, she wasn't an ordinary person, so she bowed to greet them. "I'm here to visit sister-in-law. I don't dare to trouble sister-in-law to welcome me." Yu Qianchou raised his hand to help her up. He cupped his fists and smiled at the generals on both sides. Most of the generals knew him, and when they saw him call Yuji sister-in-law, they immediately had a good impression of him, and all of them smiled. Zi heard Yu Qianchou call Yuji sister-in-law. She couldn't help but look at Yuji a few more times. A group of armored generals surrounded the 3 of them and walked to the Ghost King's hall. It was still the magnificent Ghost King's hall. However, the man who sang and cried every night was already dead, leaving only a woman in charge. After the group of people entered the great hall, Yuji invited Yu Qianchou to sit on the throne. Yu Qianchou did not stand on ceremony. With his current status, this seat was already set in stone. If he did not sit on it, no one would dare to sit on it. The former was about to call for a banquet when Yu Qianzhou glanced at Ziyi, who stood beside the throne. He waved his hand and said, "Sister-in-law, don't bother. I'm here for an important matter. I don't need to attend the banquet." Yuji also looked at Ziyi thoughtfully. Then she smiled and said, "We'll do as Mr. says. I wonder what Mr.'s here for. Can we help you?" After saying that, she glanced at the generals below with a smile. The generals of the Ghost King level immediately said, "Mister, if you need us, just tell us. Then I won't stand on ceremony with you." Yu Qianzhou crossed his legs and said with a smile, "You may not know, but the cultivation world outside the demon ghost region is in chaos. My master ordered me and this lady in Ziyi to go out and resolve it. I'm here to take 2 things. These 2 things will be of great help to me on this trip." Yuji, who was standing on the other side, said doubtfully, "I don't know what it is that Mr. is interested in. As long as it is in the Evil Wind Valley, I will give it to Mr." Yu Qianzhou stood up, looked at the crowd and said slowly, "The resurrection grass and the netherworld fire seed." The so-called netherworld fire seed was the black fire, one of the 3 true fire. He had learned this name from Miss Mu, because the demon ghosts didn't know about the 3 true fire. But when Yu Qianzhou asked, Miss Mu said that there was a kind of black fire in the 9th netherworld cave, which was called the netherworld fire seed. Silence. The Ghost King's hall instantly became quiet. Ziyi looked at the crowd expressionlessly. She didn't know why the 2 things mentioned by Yu Qianzhou would cause such a reaction. Was there anyone in the demon ghost region who dared to refuse something that the disciple of Senior Bai asked for? After a long time, Yuji said with a wry smile, "The 2 things that Mr. wants do exist here, but I'm afraid that no one in the entire demon ghost region has the ability to get them, let alone us. To be honest, Mister, the torture commissioner has also come to the 9th netherworld cave to get the resurrection grass. But even with his high cultivation, he couldn't go deep into the cave unless." Z was surprised. She didn't expect that there was a place in the world that Bai Chongqun couldn't go to. Yu Qianzhou was silent for a while. He knew that Bai Chongqun wasn't omnipotent. Bai Chongqun also couldn't go to the mysterious place under the 1,000-mile lake, and he had heard from Yuji about the 9th netherworld cave. Because it was a passage to the underworld, it had a special characteristic and not everyone with high cultivation could go there. Yu Qianzhou frowned and said, "Sister-in-law, do you mean that only the cultivation of the ghost saint late stage can go there?" "That's right." Yuji's face turned serious and said, "The journey to the netherworld is a one-way trip. It burns away all vitality and humans and ghosts walk different paths. Even if the cultivation of the ghost saint late stage wants to go to the bottom of the cave, he must be baptized by the netherworld flame. Crossing the netherworld flame sea is the door to the 9th netherworld. At that point, there will be no vitality in the human world. Once he returns to the human world, there will be a catastrophe to annihilate him instantly, so it is said that there is no return. Think about our cultivation, not to mention the netherworld flame sea. I'm afraid that we can't even withstand the evil strong wind in front of us, and our souls will be blown away before we reach the halfway point. I still want to go and have a look." Yu Qianzhou's words were shocking, and the ghost generals below were in an uproar. When Ziyi heard that the 9th netherworld cave was so powerful that even Bai Chongqun couldn't go, her face changed. She didn't know why this guy was so overconfident and insisted on trying. She thought that she wanted to protect him, so if he went she would have to go with him. Actually, she didn't know what Yu Qianzhou was thinking. The cultivation world suddenly had such a big change, and he didn't know when this matter would end. He was afraid that the life insurance of his parents, who were mortals, wouldn't be able to wait until then, so he wanted to pick the resurrection grass to refine the 7 orifices exquisite pill to extend his parents' lives. There was also the black fire, which was ranked higher than the blue fire. Since it was ranked higher than the blue fire, it must be even more powerful. If he encountered any unfavorable situation, he would be able to deal with it. Since Mr. insists, then I will go to the entrance first. At that time Mr. will know that what Yuji said is true." Yuji said helplessly. "Thank you, sister-in-law." Yu Qianzhou nodded and suddenly said, "Is the old man Yen Tuo that sister-in-law told me about last time still alive?" Yuji smiled and said, "Since Mr. has instructed, I will naturally leave him alive for Mr. to deal with." "Good." Yu Qianzhou clapped and said with a smile, "I believe that sister-in-law didn't tell him whether his son is alive or dead." He knew that Yuji was a smart woman, so if Yen Tuo said that he said his son was still here, Yuji would make plans. As expected, Yuji said with a smile, "Since Mr. said his son is still here, I will naturally smooth things over for Mr. Zi was a little confused by the strange question and answer between the two. Yu Qianzhou laughed heartily and said, "Back then I had some unresolved grievances with him on Fuxian Island. Today is the time to write it off. I will have to trouble sister-in-law to invite him over. I believe he will be very willing to go to the 9th Netherworld cave to find his son. I also want to see how powerful the 9th Netherworld cave is." Yuji giggled and nodded to the people below. A general cupped his fists and left the Ghost King Hall. To these people, the life and death of a cultivator was really nothing. At this moment, no matter how stupid Ziyi was, she understood what Yu Qianzhou was trying to do. He was obviously trying to trick others to die so that they could scout for him. She immediately said coldly, "Yu Qianzhou, you're not fit to be Senior Bai's disciple if you act like this. What do you know, lass? Old man Bai is the one who kills people like flies." Yu Qianzhou snorted and sat back on the throne. He sneered and said, "See, don't forget what my master and your father said before we came. It seems that I am the one in charge between you and me. If you think that there is something wrong with my actions, you can go back to Obedient Island and complain to my master. Say that you are not ashamed to be associated with me and withdraw from this matter." Ziyi's face was as cold as frost. She was so angry that she couldn't speak. However, she couldn't really say such words to Bai Changchun. Bai Changchun asked her to do this and she felt very honored. How could she give up halfway? And Yu Qianzhou also saw this, so he said such words. Chapter 346. Yan Tuo, whom Yu Qianzhou hadn't seen for a long time, had arrived. He was once an elder of Fuxian Island, but he was now a prisoner. He was lifted up like a little chick. The Ghost King threw him to the ground and his armor clanked. He cupped his fists and retreated to the side. Yan Tuo staggered to his feet. His hair was white and messy and his clothes were tattered. There were bloodstains on his torn clothes and it looked like he had been whipped. He looked like he had aged a few decades in an instant, and he didn't look like the elder who ordered people around. Yu Qianzhou looked down coldly. If he hadn't been too arrogant in the past, he wouldn't have been tricked by a few jokes. However, Yu Qianzhou didn't expect him to age so much. He had taken good care of himself in the past, but now his hair was all white and his face was full of wrinkles. If he didn't know who he was, he wouldn't have recognized him. It should be known that the higher one's cultivation base was, the slower they aged. How could this be? After pondering for a while, Yu Qianzhou understood. At such a young age, his dantian was sealed and his cultivation base was sealed for several months. Without the nourishment from the circulation of true origin, he naturally aged faster. Moreover, he was tortured. He didn't know how Yuji tormented him after she understood that it was fine as long as he didn't kill him. Like an old man over 100 years old in the secular world, Yan Tuo staggered around the hall. Finally, his lifeless eyes came into contact with the ice-cold gaze of the person sitting on the throne, and he abruptly realized that it was not the gaze of the smiling woman. Then he looked at the entire face. Yan Tuo's pupils shrank and he yelled with a hoarse voice, Yu Qianzhou, it's you?" He stumbled a few steps forward, but a ghost general immediately took a step forward and shouted, "How dare you!" He slapped him back to the ground. Zi couldn't bear to watch any longer. She clenched her teeth and said to Yu Qianzhou, "If you want him to die, just say the word. Why do you have to torture him like this?" Yu Qianzhou looked at her coldly and didn't say anything to her. Instead, he said to the people below, "Old man Yan Tuo, we haven't seen each other for many years. I didn't think that we would meet again. Where did the arrogance that you used to order me around go?" Yan Tuo got up again, looked around and then looked at the person sitting high up on the throne. Instantly he understood everything. The person in charge now was Yu Qianzhou. There was a trace of blood at the corner of Yan Ta's mouth as he shook his white hair and smiled bitterly. "Looks like I've been deceived by you. You have enmity with my son, so how could you not kill him? I'm sure my son has already died miserably in your hands." Yu Qianzhou sneered and said, "I never lie. If I say your son is here, then your son is naturally here. Besides, you are a dying man, so there is no need for me to lie to you." As soon as he said this, Zi immediately looked at him suspiciously. As for the generals and Yuji, their expressions were indescribable. They knew the ins and outs of Yu Qianzhou, but they didn't expect the dignified disciple of the Devil Region's torturer to lie without batting an eyelid. Moreover, he did it so openly in front of so many people. If they didn't know about it, it would be hard for them not to believe it. Yen Ta's murky eyes suddenly lit up and he immediately said, Xianxia, where is my son? Can you let me see him? Of course, no problem at all. Xianxia waved his hand in a rather forthright manner. In the end, Yuji and the others were stunned. They didn't know where he was going to find a son to meet. Unexpectedly, he said, however, your son went against me in every aspect in the supporting Immortal Island, so it's hard for me to vent my anger. Now that both of you are here, there has to be someone left to appease me. What do you want? Yen Ta asked. It's very simple. I never do things that are ruthless. Xianxia stood up and said coldly, I just arrived here today and I'm here to settle this matter. Either I remove the seal on you, let you go, or I kill your son. Or you stay and continue to suffer and I'll let your son go. Only one of you can live. Make your choice now. The group of ghost generals instantly became interested, and their gazes focused on Yen Ta. Yen Ta hesitated for a moment, then immediately replied, Xianxia, I hope you keep your word. I stay and you let my son go. The atmosphere in the hall instantly became heavy, and the group of ghost generals immediately looked at Yen Tuo in a different way. It was admiration. Damn it. What a deep father-son relationship. Xianxia glanced at Zi, who was moved, and he was rather unhappy. He wanted to watch the dark side of human nature and teach this girl a lesson. He wanted her to know what it meant to be a bastard who could see through human nature. He wanted her to know that a pitiful person must have a hateful side, so that she wouldn't be disobedient in the future. Now she would probably become even worse. Xianxia didn't know that Yen Ta had begged people to accompany him to the Demon Ghost region, but when people heard about the Demon Ghost region, they became timid and no one was willing to come. Therefore he knew that his chances of survival were slim, but in order to save his son he still came. He was already prepared to die. Although you treated your son well, you didn't teach him well and you harmed yourself and your son. You still have to pay the price. Xianxia squinted his eyes and said in a deep voice, remove the seal on his dantian, and let him go to the cave to pick up his son. Let them go together. His words sounded nice, but everyone understood that Xianxia had already sentenced Yen Ta to death. Yuji nodded to the people below and someone immediately went to remove the seal on Yen Ta. Zi bit her lips and didn't say anything. When Yen Tuo heard this, he froze in place. Only when his body trembled and the vital energy in his dantian surged out and quickly circulated to nourish his almost withered body did he believe it was true. He looked at Xianxia in a daze. Xianxia took out a few spirit pills and threw them out. He said, recover quickly. Later I will pick up your son and leave together. After the seal was removed, Yen Ta immediately became more spirited. He sucked the spirit pills into his palm, stared at Xianxia and said slowly, Xianxia, I won't tell anyone about what happened in the Demon Ghost region, or else I will be punished by heaven. Then he put the spirit pills into his mouth and sat down cross-legged. No one in the hall spoke and they all looked at Yen Ta. Knowing his fate, everyone's expression was one of sympathy or pity. Xianxia silently put his hands behind his back. He really wanted to let Yen Ta go, but now was not the time to show his soft side. At this time it was necessary to sacrifice a person to show his indifference, because there might be a day when he would take over the Demon Ghost region. Demons and ghosts couldn't be suppressed unless they were strong. Bai Changchun's actions were very effective, and it was also a warning. In the canyon that was less than a dozen miles away from the Ghost King's hall, gloomy clouds and fog were rolling. The temperature was close to freezing and the howling wind made strange sounds. Not even a blade of grass grew in the surroundings. At the bottom of the Black Canyon, a trumpet-shaped hole suddenly appeared. It was wide on the outside and narrow on the inside. From the traces on the hole, it could be seen that it was caused by the cold, bone-chilling wind that blew out of the hole for many years. On the top of the cliff opposite the hole, a group of people stood in a row. In the middle were Xianxia, Yuji, and Yen Ta. Chapter 347. There's a top-grade spirit stone mine inside and your son is mining here. Perhaps to make his words more convincing, Xianxia took out a purple spirit stone and played with it in his hand. After seeing it, Yen Tuo was a little surprised and then he looked at the hideous cave entrance and said, the top-grade spirit stone is almost extinct in the cultivation world, but I heard that it appeared in the grand auction last time. I didn't expect there to be a top-grade spirit stone mine here. Do you want to go in and look for it yourself or do I have to help you get it out? As he spoke, Yu Qianqiu clenched his fist and in one breath he sucked up all the spiritual qi in the top-grade spirit stone in his hand. Then there was a muffled sound in his palm, and as he opened his palm, a gust of chilly wind swept away a cloud of dust. Yantua did not dare to trouble him. He thought that he would send someone to bring his son out. After all, it was very difficult to find someone in such a big cave. It was not good to trouble others in the current situation. However, when he saw the chilly wind blowing at the cave entrance, Yen Tuo frowned. How could there be anyone mining in this kind of cave? He felt that something was wrong, but he could not figure it out at the moment. There's a whole other world inside. Yu Qianqiu seemed to have seen through his concerns, and his tone was a little disdainful, as if he was telling him that if he wanted to kill him, it would only take a word. There was no need to go through so much trouble. A long sword shot out and stopped in the void of the canyon in front of his feet. Yu Qianqiu stepped on the flying sword and flew towards the cave entrance first. Yen Tuo's expression was a little awkward. If he wanted to kill him, it would only take a word. There was really no need to go through so much trouble. He stomped on the ground and chased after Yu Qianqiu. When the others saw that Yu Qianqiu suddenly flew towards the cave entrance, their expressions changed greatly, and the group of ghost generals looked at Yu Ji. Yu Ji's face turned slightly pale. She had made it very clear to him, and she really didn't understand why he had to take such a risk. If something happened to the punishment envoy's disciple here, she might also lose her life. Although she was afraid, she believed that there must be a reason why Yu Qianqiu dared to do this, because he didn't look like someone who would suffer losses. Zi bit her lips. Although she didn't like Yu Qianqiu's actions, it was her duty to protect him. No matter how scared she was, she couldn't run away. Just as he was about to fly over, Yu Ji grabbed his wrist and shook her head slightly. As soon as Yu Qianqiu landed at the cave entrance and put away his flying sword, a cold wind suddenly blew out from the cave, blowing right into his face. He felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar and his body slowly stiffened. The temperature here was too low. No matter what, he was still a nascent soul cultivator, but he didn't expect to fall into an ice cave. He couldn't even circulate his true essence to resist, and even his soul felt like it was swaying and his mind was faintly dazed. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He bit the tip of his tongue and woke up. He didn't expect that he couldn't resist at the entrance of the cave with his cultivation. This 9th netherworld cave really lived up to its name. In an instant, a thin layer of green flame ignited around his body, wrapping his whole body in it. His stiff body immediately returned to normal. It seemed that as one of the 3 true flames, the green flame was not to be trifled with. When the cold wind with a faint black aura touched the green flame, it made a sizzling sound, like water splashing into a pan of oil. Yu Qianqiu suddenly discovered that while the green flame was resisting the cold wind, he seemed to be consuming it as well, but the rate of consumption was very slow. Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a moment, then immediately became happy. Although the green flame was being consumed, it could obviously resist the cold wind from the netherworld. With the large amount of green fire elements stored in his body, he might be able to go deep into the cave. However, he seemed to have forgotten that he was at the entrance of the 9th netherworld cave, and the situation behind was unknown. It seemed that it was a bit too early to be happy. Yu Qianqiu turned around and looked at Yen Tuo, who followed him. Yen Tuo obviously didn't expect the cold wind to be so powerful, but his cultivation was obviously much higher than Yu Qianqiu's. Shivering, a transparent ball of light immediately rose from his body and enveloped him. He released his protective aura to resist the cold wind. With the protection, he had the mood to look around. After seeing Yu Qianqiu wrapped in the green flame, Yen Tuo was a little surprised. Obviously, he had never seen it before. Moreover, this flame seemed to be able to subdue the cold wind. The strong wind actually couldn't extinguish it and couldn't move it at all. In fact, even Yu Qianqiu himself didn't know the reason. In fact, with the high temperature of the green flame, it was similar to an item of extreme yang, which could subdue Yin items. The cold wind that blew out from the 9th netherworld cave was exactly Yin Qi, which could subdue Yin items. Yu Qianqiu made an inviting gesture to him. Yen Tuo nodded his head, but he looked at the gloomy cave suspiciously. However, he already had no way out. He could only hope that Yu Qianqiu didn't lie to him, or else he would die no matter what. When he walked into the cave, his eyes immediately became incomparably dark, and he couldn't see the road in front of him at all. However, the green flame that appeared behind him indicated that Yu Qianqiu had also followed him in. Yan Tuo instantly felt a lot more at ease. He felt that his thoughts were a little unnecessary, because he really couldn't think of any benefits that the other party would gain from lying to him. The people on the opposite cliff all stared at the entrance of the cave without blinking, watching the two gradually disappear inside. The deeper they went, the more shocked they became. The cold wind was no longer blowing in all directions like at the entrance of the cave. It actually had a tendency to gradually solidify, hitting Yan Tuo's upstanding chi. With a piu-piu sound, the fire on Yu Qianzhou's body immediately rose a little. Otherwise, the green flame wouldn't be able to offset the attack of the cold wind in time and would hit his body. At the same time, Yu Qianzhou carefully stood behind Yan Tuo's upstanding chi, trying his best to let Yan Tuo, who was walking in front, resist the cold wind. As expected, the consumption of the green fire element was greatly reduced. The passage inside the cave suddenly turned and the two of them stopped at the same time. Before they could turn the corner, they heard a rapid whistling sound coming from inside. The chilly wind whirled out of the passage so quickly that it almost made them lose their footing. This was not the case of the wind blowing directly out of the passage, so one could imagine how strong the wind inside was. Yan Tuo looked back and saw that Yu Qianzhou's expression was indescribable. His heart instantly turned cold. Why did it seem like this was also his first time here? "Let's go," Yu Qianzhou said, but he realized that his voice couldn't travel far at all. It was as if the wind had blown it to the back, so he shouted again and made a hand gesture. Yan Tuo nodded with a grave expression. The upstanding qi on his body instantly became a lot more turbid. Clearly he had strengthened his defense. Yu Qianzhou continued to follow behind him and the two of them turned in with heavy steps. The strong wind that carried a black baleful aura attacked them, and the two of them were shocked once again. Yan Tuo felt that the upstanding qi that was supported by his quintessential essence was rapidly depleting under the attack of the cold wind and the baleful aura. Although Yu Qianzhou was hiding behind him, he could also feel the rapid depletion of the green flame. He immediately increased the output of the fire element. He was slightly better off as he had sufficient fire element reserves in his body. He only needed to use the green flame to defend, and the consumption of his quintessential essence would not be much. If it really did not work out, he could still instantly hide back in Utopia. Therefore he was not afraid of any danger at all. However, Yan Tuo's expression changed drastically. If the quintessential essence in his body was completely depleted, just how powerful would the cold wind and baleful aura be? No one had personally experienced it before, and from the looks of it, it was definitely not simple. The result could be easily imagined. The path of the cave started to go downwards and the two of them continued forward. The cold wind became stronger and the black baleful aura became thicker. Yu Qianzhou's green flame and Yan Tuo's quintessential essence were also being depleted faster and faster. However, the cave was so deep that they could not see the bottom. They had no idea when they would reach the end. In the darkness, the two of them were as small as fireflies, feeling their way forward carefully. After walking for an unknown period of time, Yan Tuo's face gradually turned pale. He felt that there was not much quintessential essence left in his body, and the end seemed to be far away. Yu Qianzhou also realized that something was wrong with his situation and immediately guessed the reason. Although he had wanted Yan Tuo to block the disaster at the front, he did not want Yan Tuo to die so early. He touched the storage bag at his waist, wanting to give Yan Tuo some spirit pills to recover his quintessential essence so that Yan Tuo could hold on for a while longer. However, he realized that it was difficult to even communicate in this situation. It was really troublesome to give him spirit pills. If he gave the spirit pills to Yan Tuo, they would definitely be blown away by the wind before they reached his hands. However, if he were to exchange them with his opponent who had a higher cultivation than him, he would definitely notice that something was wrong and guess that he was lying to him. If the other party suddenly launched a sneak attack, it was better to let Yan Tuo exhaust himself until he had no more energy to attack before giving him the spirit pills. Yu Qianzhou could not help but be on guard. As expected, Yan Tuo suddenly turned around. Under the illumination of the green fire, his faint green expression was somewhat sinister as he shouted, "Yu Qianzhou, this is not a spirit stone mine at all. My son Yanshu could not possibly mine here. Why did you trick me to come here? What kind of damned place is this?" As he was speaking with the wind, Yu Qianzhou could hear every single word clearly. The green fire suddenly expanded by a lot. Yu Qianzhou raised his brows and sneered. It was very difficult for his voice to be transmitted when he spoke with the wind in his direction. Moreover, with his current cultivation, it was impossible for him to transmit his voice. Thus, he raised his hand that was wrapped in the green fire and extended a finger to write in the air. The words "Ninth Netherworld Cave" appeared in the green fire. Immediately after, he waved his hand and the 4 green fire words were put away. At this moment he could not waste the green fire. Since Yen Tuo was able to assume the position of an elder on supporting Immortal Island, he wasn't an ignorant person. After he saw the words Ninth Hell Cave, he pondered for a moment before his expression instantly changed, and he seemed as if he'd never imagined that he would come to this place of legend one day. He immediately gritted his teeth and said, "In that case my son Yen Shu is long gone. He has a grudge against you. Did he die in your hands?" As he said that, his hand subconsciously touched his waist. He must be muddle-headed. Why the f*ck would he touch if he had nothing? Yu Qianzhou looked at his empty waist and sneered again as he extended his finger and wrote a few words. "Do you understand now? Isn't it a little too late?" His finger was like chalk and his palm was like a blackboard eraser. The moment he wrote, it was immediately erased. Yen Tuo only remembered that on the day he was captured, his storage bag had already been confiscated. On the other hand, Yu Qianzhou clapped and pulled his palms together. A green flying sword appeared between his palms. Yu Qianzhou used the sword as a pen and quickly wrote a line of words. "Old thing, you are not my opponent now. If you don't want to die, continue to lead the way." When Yen Tuo heard this, he did not care how the green flying sword appeared. He suddenly shook his head of white hair and laughed wildly. His laughter was filled with indescribable grief and indignation. He then clenched his fists and said, "Don't want to die? Yu Qianzhou, don't try to lie to me. We are already deep in the cave. Even if you let me leave now, I won't be able to make it out. Today I will die no matter what. But even if I die, I won't let you be happy." Chapter 348. I'd like to see how you're going to make me unhappy. A row of green words appeared again, full of contempt. Yen Tuo laughed wildly. The protective aura around his body slowly disappeared, and his flesh and blood started to shrink. In the blink of an eye, he was only skin and bones. On the contrary, his abdomen started to swell up. This scene caused Yu Qianzhou's pupils to shrink. He could no longer look down on Yen Tuo. He immediately thought of something terrifying: self-destructing his elixir field. For cultivators, the elixir field was the energy storage of the entire body. The consequences of self-destructing the elixir field could be imagined. After reaching the nascent soul stage, the nascent soul in the elixir field was formed from pure energy. At this time, the 3 souls and 7 spirits in the body were gathered in the nascent soul, not in the body. Therefore, for cultivators who reached the nascent soul stage, ordinary external invasions wouldn't cause any substantial harm. At most, it would hurt the body and it wouldn't be difficult to heal it. However, self-destruction after reaching the nascent soul stage was more powerful, but at the same time, it would also destroy the 3 souls and 7 spirits. In other words, if a cultivator of the nascent soul stage self-destructed, it meant that he wouldn't even have the chance to reincarnate. If a cultivator of the nascent soul stage self-destructed, there would be a next life. Yen Tuo's cultivation was in the early stage of the tribulation stage. Although he had used up a lot of his true essence, the explosion of the nascent soul stage would be terrible. Yu Qianzhou definitely wouldn't have it easy. From the looks of it, he was afraid that the explosion wouldn't be powerful enough, so he gathered all the energy in his abdomen. If it was an ordinary person, the hole was only 10 feet wide. Under such circumstances, it would be difficult to move forward or backward. Being detonated by a cultivator of the tribulation stage was equivalent to a heavy bomb exploding next to them. Fortunately, Yu Qianzhou wasn't an ordinary person. He had a third way of retreat, which was utopia. However, it was also quite frustrating for him. It wasn't easy for him to get here, and he didn't have the chance to leave a teleportation coordinate. Once Yen Tuo self-destructed, he would have to start all over again. Damn it. I've always thought that I'm ruthless, but today I've met someone even more ruthless. It's fine if he doesn't want to live in this life, but there's actually someone who doesn't even want to live in the next life. Yu Qianzhou's expression twitched. The flying sword in his hand quickly drew a few words. "You're crazy." The skeleton-like Yen Tuo let out a dry and hoarse voice. He laughed cruelly and said, "It's you, Yu Qianzhou, who has gone too far. As he spoke, the protective upstanding qi outside his body suddenly retracted into his body. He was going to self-destruct. Bastard. Bastard. Yu Qianzhou closed his eyes and shrank his head. Just as he was about to flash back to utopia, he heard painful sounds coming from Yen Ta's throat. Before Yu Qianzhou left, he opened his eyes to take a look. Immediately, his eyes widened and he didn't want to leave. As it turned out, Yen Tuo, who had withdrawn his protective upstanding qi, was immediately attacked and eroded by the chilly wind and the black spirits. The clothes on his body disappeared like ashes, followed by the hair on his body. Then his skin was shaved off from his back as if he was taking off his clothes. Then the bloody muscles that had just been revealed slid off his bones and were blown away. Yu Qianzhou, who had been hiding at the back, immediately received the reward of Yen Tuo's flesh. Then there were his organs, liver and lungs. It was really disgusting. The green fire outside Yu Qianzhou's body surged, turning everything that came into contact with it into ashes. Yen Tuo's tenaciously standing skeleton immediately withered when it came into contact with the black spirits. Under the attack of the black spirits and chilly wind, it was torn into pieces and blown away with the wind. He died just like that. What the hell is this? Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but shiver. Anyone who saw someone die like that before their eyes would also shudder. He looked around and realized that he was the only one left. Only the shrill whistling of the wind lingered in his ears. Seeing that the chilly wind and the evil spirits were so powerful, he also had some thoughts of retreating. But a wave of determination rose from the bottom of his heart. He gritted his teeth and continued to walk forward without hesitation. However, there were 2 green flying swords in each of his hands, and the green fire outside his body had grown a lot bigger. The people on the cliff outside the cave looked solemn and uneasy. The bearded Sai Zhongfei walked a few steps to the front of Yu Ji and cupped his fists, saying, "Madam, we can't just stand by and watch anymore. While Mr. hasn't gone too deep, I would like to go and call Mr. back. If it's any later, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for us to find Mr. If that's the case, we'll..." He didn't finish his sentence, but everyone understood what he was trying to say. If Yu Qianzhou died, the torturer would be enraged and no one would be able to escape responsibility. Everyone's gaze fell on Yu Ji. Yu Ji hesitated for a while and finally nodded, saying, "Zhongling, Fuzhe, listen up." "Yes." A burly general also came out and cupped his fists together with Sai Zhongfei. It turned out that Sai Zhongfei's surname was really Zhang, but he wasn't called Zhongfei but Zhongling. "I order the 2 of you to bring Mr. back quickly. If Mr. is unwilling, you can bring him back forcefully if necessary. I'll bear all the consequences." Yu Ji ordered decisively. She was indeed a woman who had followed Meng Yan for many years. At this time she finally showed her strong female side. "Yes, sir." After the 2 of them received the order, they nodded to each other. They covered their bodies with Gangqi and immediately turned into 2 shadows. They shot into the 9 Netherworld cave on the opposite side, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Based on this point alone, the cultivation of these 2 people was obviously much higher than Yu Qianzhou and Yen Tuo. "I'll go too." Ziyi had just finished speaking when she was pulled back by Yu Ji again. Yu Ji shook her head helplessly and said, "Miss, from your conversation with Mr. I can tell that your identity is not ordinary. If anything happens to you, I won't let you in no matter what." Yu Ji gently waved her hand at the 9th Netherworld cave. Immediately, 10 generals of the Ghost King flew out and directly landed at the entrance of the 9th Netherworld cave. Faint black light balls surged out from their bodies and wrapped around themselves, protecting the entire 9th Netherworld cave. The well-trained army was instantly displayed. Zi looked at them silently. She knew that she couldn't deal with the Ghost King alone. She sighed and gently broke free from Yu Ji's hand. She stood there quietly and didn't say a word. After walking for a while, Yu Qianzhou realized that this cave seemed to only have strong winds and evil spirits. There weren't any other dangers. Instead of slowly walking and exhausting his energy, it was better. After Yu Qianzhou had an idea, he gritted his teeth and jogged. The black miasma became denser and denser, and the consumption of fire elements became faster and faster. He didn't know how far underground it was. After jogging for nearly a kilometer, the tunnel turned again. Just as he turned, he felt the pressure suddenly increase and the wind became stronger. He only heard a strange F***ck cry, and the moment the sound left his mouth, he was blown back by the wind. He dodged and jumped here and there, rolling and crawling back to the turning. A group of black wind blades shot out and hit the stone wall at the turning. With a series of clanging sounds, they dispersed into black miasma and were carried away by the Yin wind. Xianxia hid in a corner and stared blankly at the black fiend that had been blown away. He understood. So the black fiend they had encountered on the way here were formed by the dissipation of these black wind blades. He wanted to release his divine sense to check, but he didn't dare because he had already tried it once before. The evil spirits could actually corrode divine sense and make him cry out in pain. It was really strange. After waiting for a while, several waves of wind blades flew out one after another. There would be a wave every few seconds. After calculating the time, he took out a piece of dark steel and threw it out. With a few dang 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 sounds, the whole piece of dark steel was cut into a few pieces and fell down. It rolled on the ground and flipped over and was blown away by the Yin wind. Faster thief. What the hell were the wind blades formed by the black miasma? They cut dark steel like cutting tofu. It was too fierce. Who could pass through here? Xianxia felt gloomy. His gaze fell on the dark stone wall and he was stunned. The stone wall here seemed to be different from the previous ones. Under the illumination of the green fire, it seemed to have an additional metallic luster. Xianxia's eyes lit up. He took out the Ghost King's token that Yuji gave him years ago from his storage bag. Comparing the two, it was exactly the same. This passage was actually formed by the dark iron structure. Xianxia silently threw the token back into the storage bag. Now was not the time to deal with the dark iron. A wave of wind blades shot out and a green light with raging flames flashed past. With a series of dang-dang sounds, the wind blades that were hit turned into evil spirits and were blown away by the Yin wind. Xianxia kept the green fire flying sword. He was confident. Since the green fire flying sword could restrain the wind blades, it would be easy. In the blink of an eye, dozens of green fire flying swords circled around him. Xianxia turned around and saw a wave of wind blades coming at him. The green fire flying sword quickly flashed out dozens of them and broke the oncoming wind blades. As for the others, as long as they did not hurt his body, he would let them fly away. Seeing that the attack was effective, Xianxia immediately increased his speed. The dozens of green fire flying swords opened a path in front of him. Zhang Ling and Fu, on the other hand, felt their way in the dark. Because the two of them were ghost cultivators, the darkness did not affect them. In addition, ghost cultivators were not afraid of the Yin wind. They were only afraid of the evil spirits. Originally, the evil spirits had no effect on ghost cultivators of the netherworld. However, the two of them were not real ghost cultivators of the netherworld. They had been in the mortal world for too long. Their bodies had accumulated a lot of human qi. Once they came into contact with the evil spirits, their souls might scatter. Cultivators like Yen Tuo originally had a mortal body, so they naturally had more human qi. However, once they encountered the evil spirits, they would naturally end up in a miserable state. They had not seen Xianxia yet. The two of them were a little anxious. While communicating with each other, they kept avoiding the topic that Xianxia might have already met with misfortune. At this moment, the two of them suddenly exclaimed in unison. The two of them could see in the dark. They saw a few broken pieces in front of them being blown by the wind. When they rolled to their feet, the two of them stepped on a piece at the same time and picked it up to take a look. They saw that it was a piece of dark steel. The cross-section was neatly cut, and there were spots that were eroded by the evil spirits. It is beyond our expectation. It seems that Mr. has already reached there. Fu Zhe transmitted his voice. Zhang Ling nodded and transmitted his voice. Let's go. Let's go take a look and see if we can catch up. The two of them quickly ran forward. Originally, the two of them could fly, but flying consumed too much vitality of ghost cultivators. They were afraid that they would not have enough vitality to support the protective gang qi to return. It was the same with teleportation. Besides, when teleportation was used, they could not teleport with the protective gang qi. After a period of time, the two of them reached the turning point. The clashing sound of wind blades in front of them stopped them in their tracks. Chapter 349. Xianxia was nowhere to be seen. The two of them looked at each other speechlessly. There was only one reason for this. Xianxia had already gone in. Whether he was dead or alive was unknown. However, the two of them did not dare to advance any further. Xianxia had the green fire to restrain the black fiend, and unknowingly they had already walked very far. Although the two ghost generals had high cultivation, they had already expended a large amount of vital qi to reach this point. If they continued to advance, they would expend too much vital qi and they would really not be able to return. What's more, the black fiend here had already erupted in the form of wind blades. Ordinary treasures in the mortal world would not be able to withstand it at all and would instead be destroyed by it. The most terrifying thing was that the black demon wind blades could break through the protective upstanding qi. How could the two ghost generals make it through if ordinary mortal treasures and protective upstanding qi could not block it? At this place, only soul formation stage and ghost sage stage experts could use their tyrannical cultivation to force their way through. Mister, you are indeed the disciple of the disciplinary envoy. You even dare to barge into such a place. Fu Zhe exclaimed. Zhang Ling remained silent for a while before replying, It's impossible for us to barge into this place and we shouldn't stay here for long either. It's better to return and report to Madam. The two ghost generals were worried that something bad had happened to Xianxia, but neither of them mentioned it. They nodded at each other and quickly retreated the way they came. Inside, Xianxia was very busy. He was not worried anymore. He jogged all the way with the green fire flying swords circling around him to open a path. He was not afraid of the baleful wind blades. The Guiyuan sword technique that he cultivated allowed him to control multiple swords at the same time, which allowed him to deal with the situation with ease. Streaks of azure light moved as fast as lightning and protected him along the way. Xianxia became excited and even felt that this was a good place to cultivate the sword technique of Guiyuan. He was considering whether or not he should bring his two disciples here to cultivate in the future. However, he temporarily rejected the idea right after. Coming here to cultivate the origin convergence sword technique probably wouldn't do without the protection of azure fire. Little sister, go ahead boldly. Move forward. Don't look back. While Zhou Xian was singing along the way, his face suddenly warped in shock. The blue fire attribute energy in his body was running out. Damn it! He was overjoyed. He had to return and replenish his blue fire elemental essence. Xianxia immediately looked around and finally found a crack in the stone wall. He took out a silver ball and stuck it inside. Who would have thought that as soon as his hand left the ball, spots would quickly appear on the silver ball, as if it was being corroded by something unknown. Not long after, the silver ball had melted and disappeared. Xianxia frowned. With a wave of his hand, he summoned a flying sword made of green flames and stabbed it into the wall. With a turn of the sword, he pulled it out and a hole appeared in the wall. Once again, he took out a silver ball and stuffed it into the hole. Then he used his palm to rub it with all his might. The nether iron wall instantly melted and sealed the hole. He heaved a sigh of relief when he sensed that the silver ball was safe and sound. Then he disappeared along with the group of flying swords. After appearing briefly in Utopia, he immediately appeared next to the azure flames burning beneath Twilight Valley and jumped into the sea of flames to absorb them. It had been a day since Zhang Ling and Fu Zhe had left the cave. The moment they emerged, they flew to the cliff on the other side. Everyone looked at the entrance of the cave. After confirming that Xianxia had not followed them out, they turned to the two generals in shock. Zhang Ling cupped his fists at Yuji and said, Madam, the two of us were still a step too late. What? Yuji in purple dress cried out at the same time. The others were also dumbfounded. Madam, don't misunderstand. Zhang Ling explained, when the two of us reached the end of the 9 nether second fold, we found that Mr. had already entered the 3rd fold. However, our cultivation was limited, so we didn't dare to chase after Mr., so we retreated and reported to Madam. Yuji looked at Fu Zhe and asked with lingering fear, Is that so? That should be the case. Madam, take a look. Fu Zhe took out the piece of profound iron and handed it to Yuji. This should have been left behind by Sir when he was testing the power of the Black Fiend wind blades at the entrance of the 3 folds. If Sir was not confident in entering, he should have turned around and returned, and the two of us would have encountered Sir. However, when we arrived, we did not see Sir. Sir must have been confident after testing, so he charged in. What you say is reasonable. Yuji looked at the profound iron that had been corroded by the Black Fiend and nodded. Although they said this, everyone was still worried. No one in the entire Chilling Wind Valley had ever entered the 3 folds of the 9 nether cave. How could one pass through that place without reaching the Ghost Sage stage? Moreover, Xianxia was only at the nascent soul stage. The difference was truly too great. Purple Dress sighed with relief. She did not know much about the 9 nether cave. Hearing that Xianxia was fine, there was nothing to worry about and they could just continue waiting. This was probably the so-called ignorant were fearless. Xianxia was not in a hurry to return to the Nine Nether Cave. Instead he rushed to Utopia and had a hearty meal with wine and meat. After eating, he wiped his mouth and returned to the passage to continue moving forward. Being in the cave he could not calculate the time. He did not know how far he had walked. There was another turning intersection. In front of him, countless wind blades flew randomly and hit the turning wall. As there were too many wind blades, the collision between them caused some wind blades to not hit the wall and turn into black fiend. They changed their angle and flew towards this passage with the help of the wind. So that was it. Xianxia found the origin of the wind blades in this passage, but the dense ones in front still needed to be verified. He raised his eyebrows. Relying on the blue fire flying sword's ability to restrain the wind blades, he barged in arrogantly. In the end, he did not stay for long before he obediently retreated. There were too many wind blades inside. Although Xianxia could block them, he could only move forward slowly. If this continued, he would tire himself to death. He did not know when he would reach the end. His eyes flickered as he pondered for a moment. He turned around and walked to the nether metal wall. The blue fire on his fingers was suppressed into 5 sharp claws. He stabbed into the nether metal wall and dug out a large piece. He quickly used the blue fire to refine it into a V-shaped shield. If it were anyone else, they would not have the fire to refine artifacts. Even if they had fire, how could ordinary fire so easily refine the nether metal? It would probably be troublesome to dig out a large piece from the wall. Why didn't I think of this earlier? Hugging the shield, Xianxia chuckled and hid behind it. Just as he turned around and entered another passageway, the shield in front of him immediately trembled violently. Xianxia trembled non-stop as he held onto the shield. Without hesitation, he covered the front of the nether metal shield with a meter-thick V-shaped blue fire. The effect was very good, but the consumption of the blue fire was too high. However, with the blue fire blocking the black fiend wind blades as a buffer, he immediately felt much better. After walking for a short distance, he realized that he could not see the path in front of him. Thus, he pressed the blue fire claw on his 5 fingers. With a few schwa-schwa sounds, a dozen irregular holes immediately appeared on the shield, allowing him to see the path. Chapter 350. He did not know the time in the cave and he could not move fast due to the strong wind. However, Xianxia knew that a few days had passed. He had gone back to replenish the green fire elements 3 times just to advance through the tunnel. During this period of time, because the wind blades were constantly hitting the shield, his hands could not take it anymore. He returned to Utopia to rest a few times. There were a few times when he saw that he could not reach the end of this path. He really wanted to give up, but his character of not admitting defeat easily forced him to grit his teeth and endure it. He wondered if this was considered not giving up until he saw the coffin. In fact, it was already a miracle that he could reach this point. Even if an expert at the end of the Tribulation Transcendence stage was fully prepared, it would be impossible for him to reach this point. As a nascent soul stage cultivator, he should be proud. Of course, this was mainly due to the green fire and the special ability to retreat midway. If it were anyone else, as long as they entered, they would either walk to the end or return. How could they give them the chance to retreat midway? If entering the Hades cave was a competition, Xianxia should be the one to cheat. On both sides of the main passageway, 4 small holes suddenly appeared. The wind was blowing out from these 8 holes. Rather than saying that there were 8 holes, it would be more appropriate to say that they were the eyes of the wind. The wind was very strong. Not only was it difficult to advance, but it was also blowing him backward. Xianxia did not know whether to laugh or cry. He felt that he really did not have the ability to pass through the 8 wind eyes. However, it would be a pity to give up now. Withstanding the strong wind, Xianxia held the nether iron shield at a 90-degree angle and looked through the hole in the shield. The 2 small holes were attached to the 2 sides of the main tunnel. The black baleful aura floated over from the end of the main tunnel. It was caused by the 8 wind eyes. He did not know what scientific principle it used, but it actually turned the black baleful aura into wind blades and blew them out. It was really King fatal. It was impossible to enter the 8 wind eyes. Running into the wind eyes was no different from courting death. However, he could consider taking a look at the main tunnel. But to get to the other end of the main passage, they had to walk through the 2 rows of wind eyes. Looking at the wind eyes, they were probably not to be trifled with. If they were not careful, they would be torn to pieces. Looking at the distance from here to there, It might be more than 100 meters. What should they do? Yu Qianqiu, who was holding on with his shield, looked at the ground and his eyes suddenly lit up. He thought to himself, since I can't walk through this path, why don't I dig a tunnel and go through it? Not bad. Looks like I can only use the stupid method. Only someone with this kind of ability like him could come up with such a crazy idea to dig a hole under a whole piece of nether iron. Just think about it, even a small piece of nether iron was difficult. Who would think of digging a hole? Moreover, it would be digging a distance of at least 100 meters. Holding the shield, dozens of green fire flying swords surged out of his body. They gathered together and dug into the ground. The pieces of nether iron that were dug out were immediately blown away by the cold wind. Not long after, the green fire flying swords drilled into the ground. Yu Qianqiu moved over with great difficulty. The green fire flying swords on his body surged crazily and he crawled in with a whoosh. He dragged the shield behind him in case of any accidents. After entering the hole, he realized that the diameter of the hole was too small. It was only a square meter and it was difficult for him to squat down. Hence, 100 green fire flying swords shot out at the same time, and soon, a hole that was 1 meter wide and 2 meters tall appeared. Finally, he could stand up comfortably. The shattered nether iron in the tunnel was piled up. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up and he immediately picked up the green fire flying swords that were digging the hole and threw them into Utopia. After walking for more than 10 meters, he felt that it was impossible for the wind blades to dig into the ground again, so he put away the nether iron shield on his back. He took out a large handful of fluorites and ran to the entrance of the cave. He placed one every meter in a straight line. This was naturally for positioning. He was afraid that he would dig in the wrong direction. What if he dug into the eye of the wind? After digging for dozens of meters, Yu Qianqiu retracted the green fire on his body. As the baleful aura and cold wind could not enter this place, he turned around and raised his middle finger at the entrance of the cave behind him. He said in disdain, "Black and swarthy wind blades, I look down on you." He then glanced at the fluorites on the ground and saw that they were still in a straight line. Only then did he release his divine sense and follow behind the green fire flying swords that were digging the hole. He quickly swept the nether iron into Utopia. The tunnel was eerie, and only the 100 flying swords were shining with a demonic green light. Don't ask me where I come from. My hometown is far away, why do I wander? Yu Qianqiu proudly sang a song with his hands behind his back. When he found that there were 200 fluorite stones on the table, he stopped singing. The distance between each fluorite was about 1 meter, which meant that there were now 200 meters. They should have passed through the 8th eye of the wind. Yu Qianqiu's expression turned solemn. He took out the nether iron shield again and covered his body with green fire again. He controlled the 100 flying swords to dig diagonally upwards. As expected, once the hole appeared, a large amount of black mist-like baleful aura surged in. The moment it touched the green fire flying swords, it would sizzle. It was the same when it touched the green fire flying swords on Yu Qianqiu's body. Yu Qianqiu was in for a penny, in for a pound. Since it had already come to this, he simply controlled the flying swords to dig a very generous exit. Then he summoned the flying swords to protect himself and carefully walked out. As expected, he had already passed through the eye of the wind and was more than 50 meters away. It was very quiet in front, and only the whistling sound of the wind behind him could be heard. Oh my! He didn't know how far he had walked and he didn't know if there were any powerful things in front of him. Yu Qianqiu walked forward with some trepidation. The strange thing was, other than the dense black mist-like baleful aura that was everywhere, there seemed to be nothing else. There wasn't even a trace of the Yin wind from before. It was just that the consumption of the green fire was very high, so it didn't seem to be too dangerous. He had the protection of the green fire, so he didn't have much of a reaction. However, he didn't know that such a dense black mist-like baleful aura was a fatal blow to others. No matter how high one's cultivation was, it was already not easy for them to endure such a long distance ahead. Now that they encountered such a dense black mist-like baleful aura, it was extremely dangerous. Yu Qianqiu gradually increased his pace. After walking for about 1,000 meters, he suddenly had an indescribable strange feeling. It felt a little chilly. Logically speaking, being wrapped in the green fire, it shouldn't be cold. He thought about it and guessed that it was just a psychological effect. He didn't think too much about it and continued forward. Who knew that the further he walked, the colder he felt. In the end, he was actually shivering in the green fire and his teeth were chattering. Only then did he feel that something was wrong. Could it be that he was almost at the end of the 9 Netherworld cave? Otherwise, how could it be so strange? Perseverance was victory. The green fire on Yu Qianqiu's body flared up, hoping to expel the cold. However, he felt that the coldness in his body came from his bones. Even with the green fire, it was useless. The further he walked, the colder it got. His body felt like it was going to freeze. It was a cold feeling that reached his soul. This feeling made people feel like they could smell the scent of death. It was rather heart-palpitating. Yu Qianqiu immediately stopped and didn't dare to walk forward. Suddenly, there was a faint flash of fiery red light in front of him. It made people feel that it was the end. However, that feeling was too terrifying. Yu Qianqiu hesitated again and again, but in the end he gritted his teeth. After working so hard, he couldn't give up now. His legs trembled as he continued forward. The further he walked, the thinner the black baneful aura became. Slowly, it stopped spreading throughout the entire tunnel and gathered at the top of the tunnel. The black clouds flowed into the tunnel at the back like water. It was probably the airflow produced by the wind eye inside that sucked it in. Red light filled his vision, but Yu Qianqiu felt his vision and consciousness become blurry. He vaguely sensed that he had reached the end and subconsciously stopped. He kept calling out to himself in his heart, "I can't stay here any longer. Otherwise my life will be in danger. Return to Utopia. Return," he kept calling out in his heart, but his consciousness was very scattered. His divine sense was unable to lock onto Utopia and return. His body also felt colder and colder, almost to the point that he couldn't move. The green fire outside his body gradually shrank, and he was in a precarious situation. Chapter 351. The chilly wind in the 9th Netherworld cave blew out as usual. Yu Qianqiu had been inside for half a month, but there was still no reaction. The group of people waiting outside the cave gradually felt their hearts grow cold. They all had a bad premonition, but they still stood guard outside, clinging to a trace of hope. Clang, clang. A faint sound came from inside the cave. The 10 ghost generals guarding the cave were the first to hear it, and they all turned around to look. Although the people on the opposite cliff were not as close as them and did not hear the sound, they were all attracted by the unusual behavior of the ghost generals. Could it be that Yu Qianqiu had returned? The same thought appeared in everyone's mind, and they all stared at the cave entrance. The ghost generals at the cave entrance did not see anyone coming out, but they saw some black stones rolling weakly to a place not far from the cave entrance and stopped. The wind at the entrance was probably not strong enough to blow the stones out of the cave. 2 ghost generals dashed in and picked up a few stones to take a look. They were instantly shocked. The 2 nodded and shot out of the cave, flying to the side of Yuji on the opposite cliff. "Madam, look, it's nether iron. Not far from the cave entrance, a lot of it has been blown out by the wind, and there are faint sword marks on it." A ghost general handed over the nether iron in his hand and said. Yuji took the nether iron and her eyes lit up again. She ordered, "The 2 of you, quickly go and collect all the nether iron that can be collected at the cave entrance." The 2 generals obeyed, and in no time, they had gathered a large pile of nether iron on the cliff top. The group of people watched, and after Zhang Lingxian checked, he stood up and said to Yuji, "Madam, nether iron is not afraid of the chilly wind and the black wind blades, and ordinary magic tools are useless against it. Moreover, there are sword marks on every piece of nether iron, and it is obvious that someone used a sword to dig them out. I'm afraid that Mr. has an extremely powerful sword on him that can easily dig out nether iron. It is very likely that Mr. is digging out nether iron to defend against the black wind blades." His judgment was right. These nether iron were blown out by the wind when Yu Qianqiu first started digging the tunnel. "That's right." A relaxed smile appeared on Yuji's face as she said, "You are a disciple of the punishment enforcer, so it's not surprising that you have 1 or 2 extremely powerful treasures." Hearing this, everyone nodded their heads in agreement. If this was heard by Yu Qianqiu, he would only reply with, "Ah pooey. What bullsh *t treasure." Ze frowned instead and said, "Madam, Yu Qianqiu went in with Senior Yen Ta, and Yen Ta's cultivation is much higher than Yu Qianqiu's. Why are all of you so sure that these things were definitely made by Yu Qianqiu and not Senior Yen Ta?" Yuji glanced at the smiling crowd, then she looked at the 9 Netherworld cave and said with a smile, "The 9 Netherworld cave is the passageway from the human world to the Netherworld, so it's not a place that ordinary people can go. The closest place with nether iron is also at the end of the passageway. Not to mention the deeper places, just that place alone. Other than the Ghost King's final stage ghost cultivators, few human experts at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage can reach that place, let alone Yenta, who is only at the initial stage of the tribulation passing stage. Therefore Yenta is already dead if he can't reach that place. Xianxia's cultivation is even lower, so it's even more impossible for him to reach that place. Zi confirmed her suspicions. Seeing that she still hadn't figured it out, Yuji patiently explained, logically with Mr.'s cultivation, it would be difficult for him to stay at the entrance of the cave for a long time. Did you see the green flame on Mr.'s body before he entered the cave? That must be what Mr. relied on to enter the cave. Also, I don't know if you noticed, but before Yenta entered the cave he didn't have anything on him. It's impossible for us to leave anything that could threaten Mr.'s safety on him, so the black iron that came out earlier couldn't have been brought in by Yenta, and it's even more impossible for a treasure to excavate the nether iron in front of us. Moreover, although Mr.'s cultivation isn't high, his magic power is profound. At least, I saw with my own eyes that he killed a demon king at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage with a raise of his hand. Mr. is only at the initial stage of the tribulation passing stage, so it's naturally not a problem for Mr. to deal with Yenta. The demon king that was killed by Zi was Yu Fengjiao, but it was obviously the first time that everyone heard about this, so they were all secretly shocked. Ziyi's expression changed, and she thought about what her master had told her before. When there was danger he should run first, and that brat definitely had the ability to protect himself. Now it seemed that what her master said was true. Yu Qianqiu could even kill a demon king at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage, so he indeed had the ability to protect himself. Once this thought was confirmed, and she let go at a crucial moment in the future, it made Yu Qianqiu not know whether to laugh or cry, and he almost called her great aunt. This was all in the future, and they would talk about Yu Qianqiu later on. Yu Qianqiu, who was in a critical situation, gradually fell into a state of unconsciousness and finally fell softly to the ground. The blue fire on his body had already been completely absorbed into his body, and it was also fortunate that the black fiend had flowed in from the top of the cave, or else it would have been terrible. In a daze, Yu Qianqiu suddenly opened his eyes and woke up and found that he was actually lying on the ground, so he hurriedly got up. Just as he was rejoicing that he was fine, he suddenly saw another person lying at his feet and was shocked on the spot. He thought to himself, could it be that someone had also broken in and had also fainted like me? When Yu Qianqiu bent down to see that person's appearance clearly, he instantly felt as if he was struck by lightning and took a few steps back. If he did not see wrongly, that person looked exactly the same as him, and that person's attire and accessories, it was clearly him. Feeling bewildered, Yu Qianqiu squatted down and wanted to turn that person over to examine him properly, in order to resolve the doubts in his heart. Who knew that when his hand touched that person, it actually passed through his body, and he did not know whether the person on the ground was an illusion or he was an illusion. How could this be? Could it be? Could it be? He thought of a chilling possibility: he might have already died or his soul had left his body. In great shock, he shook his head woodenly and retreated. He could not accept this kind of result. Who knew that when he moved a little further away from the person lying on the ground, his whole body actually floated up lightly, and a strong suction force came from the place where the red light was shining at the end of the tunnel, and dragged him over. Don't. I haven't lived enough, I don't want to die. Yu Qianqiu struggled with all his might in the air, but it was useless. That mysterious force made him unable to resist. At this moment, the person lying on the ground suddenly emitted a burst of golden light, and immediately after, a brilliant silver light pillar shot out like a galaxy, directly enveloping Yu Qianqiu, who was struggling in the air, cutting off that mysterious force and actually slowly pulling him back. The scenery in front of Yu Qianqiu's eyes changed, and he suddenly found himself in the vast and brilliant universe. In the vast universe, the galaxy was brilliant, and the stars formed a nebula, eternal, lonely, desolate, and beautiful, and he was floating in the endless universe. Faster thief. Could it be that I am dreaming? Yu Qianqiu was stunned, and just as he was trying to figure out what was going on, his vision suddenly turned black and he fainted again. After a long time, Yu Qianqiu, who was lying on the ground, opened his eyes again and suddenly jumped up. He anxiously looked around and did not see the person he saw in his dream on the ground. His hands touched all over his body, and he finally heaved a sigh of relief, patting his chest in relief, and said, "Good, Good, I was wondering why I ran into the universe again. There are no sci-fi blockbusters to watch now. So it was a dream. I was almost scared to death. Chapter 352. But there was one thing that had aroused his suspicions. That bone-chilling cold had been carved into his bones. And the matter of him fainting just now was definitely not a dream. It was something very real. Strange, he didn't feel that cold anymore, just a little chilly. Something was fishy. As Xianxia was pondering, he saw that he was safe and sound even without the protection of the blue flames. He looked up at the black fiends floating above him and immediately understood. His gaze fell on the end of the red light and he carefully walked over. When he reached the cave entrance, he was immediately stunned by the scene before him. He was at the entrance of a cave on the cliff of a huge underground space. In front of him were endless raging flames that soared to the sky, black flames. Below was the molten red lava, which also dyed the black flames red. However, it was easy to tell that these flames were black in color. Massive black lotuses grew in the lava, and the raging flames were the result of the black lotuses. They were in the exact same form as the blue lotuses he had seen in Twilight Valley, but the blue lotuses were not as long as the black lotuses. In short, the entire scene was very grand and imposing. Xianxia had seen the blue flames bred by the blue lotuses, so he naturally understood what the black lotuses before him signified. It was clear that this black sea of flames was the netherworld flame Yuji had spoken of, the legendary netherworld ghost flame of the demon realm, and also one of the 3 true flames he desired, black flame. After so much trouble he had finally arrived here. Xianxia was rather excited, but his joy didn't last for long. That bone-chilling cold from before stealthily crept over his body, and he couldn't help but shiver. It felt like even his blood was about to freeze. Damn. Was he going to faint again? What the hell was going on here? As he sensed that his consciousness was getting a little dizzy, Xianxia became bewildered. At this moment, the nascent soul sitting cross-legged in his dantian exploded with golden light, and the entire nascent soul transformed into a small golden man of sparkling light. A warmth flowed from his dantian to his entire body, instantly dispersing the cold. The golden light on the nascent soul also slowly faded. Xianxia was slightly startled, but he was immediately delighted. It seemed that the golden bead was working again. There was something strange about this place. It was not advisable to stay for long. Xianxia poked his head out of the cave and quickly looked around. Although the sea of fire in front of him was dyed red, the top of the fire was clearly black. Black smoke was rising from the top of the blazing fire, gathering above the huge underground space like a dark cloud. Perhaps it was because of the airflow produced by the wind eye behind them. A strand of the black clouds that had gathered above them was continuously sucked into the cave. He immediately understood that the so-called black fiend was the remaining smoke of the black fire, and it was precisely this remaining smoke that formed the most difficult obstacle to enter the 9th netherworld cave. Just the smoke alone was so powerful, so the black fire itself must be even more powerful. Xianxia licked his lips as he stared greedily at the sea of fire. He immediately noticed something strange. The black fire was also fire, and there was also the molten lava below. Logically speaking, he should have been able to feel the intense heat if he wasn't standing too far away. So why did he feel a little chilly instead? This was far too abnormal. He couldn't figure it out, so he decided to stop thinking about it. Seizing the time to gather the black fire element he needed was the best course of action. He immediately sat down cross-legged and began to circulate the star flame fire art. With his eyes closed, Xianxia immediately sensed the majestic amount of black fire element contained in this underground space. It was many times more abundant than the blue fire element in Twilight Valley, and it probably had something to do with the many black lotuses producing the black fire element. The abundance of fire element was exactly what Xianxia wanted. The star flame fire art began to circulate faster, and the little black spirits began to pour into his body through his pores and gather at his dantian. The moment they entered the dantian, one of the 2 beads revolving around the nascent soul, the red bead, suddenly exploded with a red light, immediately attracting the little black spirits. Although the red bead seemed small, it seemed to have a space within it, and it welcomed the guests with open arms. It was unknown just how much black fire element the red bead had absorbed, but once the red light faded, the black fire element stopped pouring in and began to disperse from the dantian to every cell in his body. When the cells that stored water and green fire elements saw the arrival of a guest, They immediately compressed themselves to make room for the guest. After absorbing his fill of black fire element, Xianxia put away the star flame fire art. When he opened his eyes, two illusory black flames flickered in his pitch-black pupils. Together with the satisfied smile on his face, he exuded a sinister aura. The moment the black fire element entered his body, he immediately felt a connection with it, and he immediately understood why this place felt so cold. It turned out that this black fire was not like the blue fire, which had a high temperature. It was a type of ice fire which was the opposite of the blue fire. The specific effect it had to be tested, but since it was ranked higher than the blue fire, its power must not be small. Xianxia stood up. At this moment his body no longer felt that bone-chilling cold. He had already subdued the black fire, so why would he be afraid of the black fire's low temperature? His gaze shot towards the blazing flames, and he wondered if the legendary door of the Nine Hell that led to the netherworld would be behind the flames. He stretched out his palm and a black flame emerged from the center of his palm. It was a black color that could take one's soul away. The fire turned rapidly and quickly condensed into a black flying sword that floated out of the cave. Just as Xianxia was about to step on it and pass through the sea of netherworld fire, he seemed to see the 3 words by Changchun on the wall of the netherworld iron cave from the corner of his eyes. Actually, he had already stepped on the sword and flew out of the cave. He thought he was seeing things when he saw the 3 words from the corner of his eyes, but he still turned around and flew back. When he looked carefully at the entrance of the cave, he realized that there really were 3 words by Changchun on the wall, and there were more than just these 3 words. As the color of the words in the wall were the same and he did not look carefully before, he naturally did not realize it. It was only when he stepped on the flying sword that he discovered it due to the lighting and the angle. The handwriting was bold and powerful, as if it was engraved with some kind of sharp weapon. It might even be a sword. Xianxia carefully looked at it and it wrote, "Lonely and invincible in the human world, but I have no fate to ascend to the heavens. I have long heard that the netherworld is equal to the celestial world, and I wish to find a strong opponent. The sea of netherworld fire separates the 2 worlds, but my wishful thinking ends here." There was another sentence written especially conspicuously, "By Changchun returns with hatred." This was obviously written by Changchun himself. Xianxia's eyebrows twitched as he read it. The meaning of the words was very easy to understand. The general meaning was, Bai Changchun is lonely and invincible in the human world. He wants to find an opponent in the celestial world, but he can't. He heard that the netherworld is equal to the celestial world, so he wants to find an opponent in the netherworld. Unfortunately, he can't cross the netherworld fire sea in front of him, so he returns unhappily. F***ck***ck***ck***. Xianxia said a few times in a row and shook his head with a bitter smile. The old fellow is so strong that he's a little unreliable. He thinks that he has nothing better to do and even thinks about the people from the celestial world and the netherworld. I was wondering why I heard from Yuji that the old fellow came here before, so he wants to find a fight in the netherworld ghost world. He really has nothing better to do. I'm speechless. He shook his head helplessly, and just as he turned around he paused and looked at the netherworld fire sea with an Could it be that this netherworld fire sea is so powerful that even with the old fellow's cultivation he can't cross it? Then wouldn't I be even more powerful than the old fellow if I cross it? Damn it. It's not good to publicize such a flashy thing. Laozi has to leave some words here. Who knows, maybe some later generations will come here and know that there is a person like me, Xianxia. Without hesitation, the black flying sword made a series of noises on the cave wall, but it didn't leave any marks. Xianxia slapped his forehead. This netherworld metal could restrain the black demon wind blade, so it was normal that it could restrain the black fire. Looks like he still had to use the green fire. A finger ignited with a green glow. Xianxia pondered for a while, then waved his finger and slowly wrote a few lines of words on the cave wall. I heard that Master came here before, so Disciple also came to join in the fun. Since Master can't cross here, Disciple will give it a try. In the Great Sea, the new waves push the old and each generation is stronger than the last. Finally, he also left a very conspicuous line of words. Xianxia has been here. These words were written behind by Changchun's words. After he finished writing, he carefully looked at it. Comparing the two, no matter if his words were neat or not, the structure made him feel ashamed. How could this have the momentum of each generation being stronger than the last, so he couldn't stand it anymore? Without saying anything else, he shamefully stepped onto the flying sword and charged into the netherworld fire sea, looking like he was seeking death. Chapter 353. Only when he was in the sea of fire did he realize that the lava below should still be at a normal high temperature, but it was suppressed by the ice and fire released by the Black Lotus. Xianxia was a little proud. Even Bai Chongqun couldn't make it through, but he could do it with ease. He was born with talent. Just as he was feeling proud of himself, the front suddenly became empty. Only then did he realize that he had passed through a sea of fire that was nearly 1,000 meters wide. Xianxia slowly descended on his sword. Beneath his feet was a soft black pure land. His gaze fell on the mountain wall in front of him. The huge dark iron mountain wall stood straight in front of him. It was curved in shape and carved with skulls of different sizes. There seemed to be adults and children's skulls. Against the fiery red light of the molten lava, the entire mountain wall seemed to be piled up with skulls. Standing in front of it, pairs of pitch-black eye sockets seemed to be looking at you as if questioning you about something. It made you feel a palpitating aura of death. It was very thick, very heavy and oppressive, making it difficult for you to breathe. There was a door in the center of the skull wall. It was more than 10 meters tall and 7 to 8 meters wide. All kinds of human heads were carved on it. They weren't skulls. There were old people, children, men and women with all kinds of expressions. Happiness, anger, sorrow and happiness were vividly expressed. It gave people the feeling that once you entered the door, you would forget all the emotions in the world. Other than the human heads, there was also a beast head on each side of the door that looked like a sky-swallowing beast. There was a knocker hanging from the fangs of the beast. There was a huge dark iron tablet in the weeds beside the door. There were words on the tablet: Dark Ghost Realm, knock on the double knocker. Once you enter, do not open the door for humans, demons and demons, or you will never return. This was clearly a warning sign, telling people that ghosts could enter, but others should not enter, or else they would never come out. Xianxia looked at it and found it strange. It was fine if humans and demons did not enter, but why did demons come out? Was there a demon realm? It seemed like it was the same no matter how he looked. Xianxia did not think it was a big deal. In any case, he would not open the door and run in. He was not someone like Old Bai who had nothing better to do. Instead, it was the weeds under the nether steel that piqued his interest. The color of the grass was bright red, and it had 3 branches and 7 leaves, which coincided with the number of 3 souls and 7 spirits in the human body. Xianxia couldn't help but laugh out loud. This grass was none other than the resurrection grass that he was looking for. How could he not be happy? As soon as he laughed, he immediately heard evil laughter coming from everywhere in this space, as if the laughter came from those skulls. Xianxia was shocked and quickly shut his mouth. The strange laughter also gradually stopped. So it was Huyin. He heaved a sigh of relief but did not dare to laugh anymore. He walked over and plucked a stalk of resurrection grass. He examined it closely and sniffed it. Sure enough, it was colorless and odorless. Who would have thought that the moment his breath touched the resurrection grass in his hand would immediately turn into a cloud of black smoke and dissipate? Xianxia was stunned with his hand open. He recalled the records in the pill recipe jade archive. The resurrection grass was not a spiritual herb of the human world. It could not come into contact with human life or it would immediately turn into smoke. He raised his hand and slapped his forehead, coming to a realization. He decided that he would seal it in ice and harvest it when he needed it. Hence he took out a silver ball and stuffed it into a place that he thought was safe. After he felt that there wouldn't be any problems, he began to wander around to see if there was anything else that he needed. Alas, this place was very poor. It seemed that other than the black soil and nether steel on the ground, there was only the resurrection grass left. He was no longer interested in these things. It wasn't easy for him to come here, so he had to bring something back with him to commemorate his trip. Dig up a skull and bring it back? There was no point. As he was looking around, his gaze suddenly fell on the door that led to the netherworld. The door knockers in the mouths of the 2 heaven-devouring beasts were black and shiny, faintly emitting a black glow. They shouldn't be made from nether steel. Could they be some kind of treasure? Xianxia's eyes lit up. His interest was immediately piqued. The position of the door knocker was very high. It was about 4 to 5 meters tall. He mounted a flying sword and flew over. He touched the door knocker and carefully examined it. The door knocker was very big, just like the heaven and earth ring hanging on Najah's neck. Moreover, judging from the material, it was obviously different from the other materials on the door. It was definitely not nether steel. He tried to pull it out, but unfortunately, the beast's head was obviously not made from ordinary materials. It was impossible to remove the door knocker with brute force. Without another word, Xianxia released his black flame and compressed it into a cutting shape. Unfortunately, there was no reaction after sawing for a long time. Since his black flame didn't work, he released his blue flame. Sure enough, the blue flame was more effective in dealing with this thing than the black flame. However, the beast's tooth that locked the door knocker was also an extraordinary item. Even if the blue flame was effective in dealing with it, the effect was minimal. Once again, Xianxia displayed his perseverance and indomitable spirit. He climbed onto the beast's head and sat on it. He used his blue flame to compress the saw knife and saw it with all his strength. After another half a day, the lower tooth of the beast's tooth was finally sawed off by him. The tusk, which was as long as a chopstick and as thick as a banana, was held in his hand. He couldn't tell what material it was made of. However, since it could be used here, it was definitely not an ordinary item. Therefore, he directly confiscated it. The door knocker was formed by the 4 tusks of the beast's head. After cutting off one lower tooth, he continued to saw the other lower tooth. After the other lower tooth was sawed off, the door knocker finally fell to the ground. Thump! It fell on the black soil and made a dull sound. Xianxia put away the beast's tooth and jumped down from the beast's head. He picked up the door knocker and immediately felt that it was extremely heavy. This fellow probably weighed more than 500 kilograms. However, with his current cultivation, this bit of weight was nothing. He knocked on it and looked at it over and over again, but he didn't find anything special about this door knocker. It was probably just that the material was special. Xianxia immediately felt a little depressed. He shook his head and muttered, "I thought it was some kind of treasure. I wasted so much effort. If there's a chance, I should let old man Bai take a look and see if it's useful." In the spirit of not going to waste, he also put away the door knocker. Xianxia turned back to look at the gate to the netherworld realm. He couldn't help but smile smugly. That heaven-devouring beast had lost 2 of its lower fangs and the ring it was holding in its mouth. That fellow, which had originally been rather imposing, immediately felt a lot less imposing. This was especially so when compared to the other heaven-devouring beast that it was fighting against. It seemed rather out of place. Moreover, the whole gate to the netherworld also seemed a little strange. It destroyed the overall eerie atmosphere. If someone had seen it later, they would definitely wonder if the netherworld was that poor. They couldn't even bear to spend money to clean up the facade of the gate to the netherworld. Looking at the other door knocker, Xianxia decided to let it go for the sake of the netherworld. Actually, he still felt that it was troublesome to get this thing down. Furthermore, it didn't seem to be of much use. Otherwise, with his temper, he wouldn't be so lucky. He would probably even pry open the gate to the netherworld. He had been extremely bold and destroyed the facade of the netherworld. It was a little too early for him to be happy. This greedy action had caused a lot of trouble in the future. Just think about it. After the netherworld discovered this, they would definitely send people out to investigate. The master and disciples' names on the cave wall would make it easy for the netherworld's people to find them. Once they left the 9th netherworld cave, the demon domain would definitely be the first to bear the brunt. Furthermore, Bai Changchun was also an extremely bold and fearless person. He couldn't go to the netherworld to find people to spar with. If someone came looking for him, he would fight them. Regardless of whether they were in the sky or on the ground, regardless of victory or defeat, he would still fight them. Chapter 354. He rode the black flame flying sword back the way he had come. As he crossed the netherworld flame sea, he suddenly recalled something. Twilight Valley's underground had a blue lotus, a child, and a terrifying dragon. He wondered if there would also be one below. Xianxia glanced down at the sea of flames and immediately sensed that something was secretly observing him. He immediately felt a chill run down his spine. Perhaps it was just a psychological effect. He quickly passed through the sea of flames and returned to the cave entrance. The words on the cave wall were still there, the good and bad of the 2 characters clearly distinguishable. He was unwilling to accept this, but he suddenly recalled the cave he had dug. His eyebrows rose as he walked to the other side of the cave wall. He extended a finger and with a flash of blue light he began to earnestly write. The tree planted by the predecessor, the shade enjoyed by the descendant. The eye of the wind is sad. This one was kind and dug a tunnel to make it convenient for the descendant to enter. Finally he signed, Yu Qianchou. Yu Qianchou took a few steps back and nodded in satisfaction. He muttered, one naturally has to leave their name after doing a good deed. At least it's a good example to learn from. He didn't know how many days he had been here, but it was time to go back. He thought of using teleportation to leave the 9 Netherworld cave, but he felt that it was inappropriate, so he gave up. He strode back the way he had come. When he reached the area filled with the Black Fiend, his entire body ignited with black flames. Wisps of fiendish energy drifted out from the top of his head like black smoke. Compared to when he had been possessed by the blue flames, he now seemed to possess a heart-palpitating evil aura. Since the Black Fiend was produced by the Black Flames, the Black Flames should be able to restrain the Black Fiend. This was what Yu Qianchou thought, and the results did not disappoint him. The thick Black Fiend immediately dodged to the side when it encountered the Black Flames. The path ahead was too dark. Although the Black Flames were eye-catching, they had no illuminating effect. Yu Qianchou threw out a blue flame flying sword and led the way. He quickly followed, quickly arriving at the cave he had dug. He glanced at the eye of the wind in front of him. Even with the protection of the Black Flames, he was still somewhat afraid. In the end he decided to go through the tunnel. When they reached the end of the tunnel, they saw that the hole they dug at the beginning was too small and they had to crawl to get out. Hence, a few blue fire flying swords flew out and quickly made a beautiful exit. Then, with the black flame wrapped around him, he slowly stretched out a hand to test it. He saw several spinning wind blades coming at him turn into black fiends the moment they touched the black flame and were blown away by the chilly wind. He immediately felt relieved. Hee. People drive sports cars for a spin, but it seems like I have to ride a flying sword in the 9th Netherworld cave. Yu Qianchou laughed weirdly as he hopped onto the black flame flying sword. A green light shot out of the cave entrance and he chased after them. Who knew that as soon as he came out of the cave, he would almost be blown off the sword by the strong wind. Hence he squatted on the sword to reduce the wind resistance, and only dared to stand up openly after flying for a long distance. Along the way the green flame flying sword led the way. Riding on the black flame flying sword and protected by the black flame, he was not afraid of the Yin wind and the black demon wind blades. In the 9th Netherworld cave, Yu Qianchou rode on the sword with the help of the wind. The speed he was traveling at was worlds apart from the speed he used to come here. In the cave he fully displayed his superb sword riding skills. He also quickly turned and skimmed through the twists and turns. Drifting on a flying sword, that was a great feeling. Just as a green light flashed by, one could see him quickly chasing after them while laughing wildly. Outside the 9th Netherworld cave, a month had passed. Everyone was still waiting on the cliff for Yu Qianchou to return. Too much time had passed and everyone actually did not have much hope in their hearts. However, no one wanted to give up and hoped for a miracle. It should be known that if something happened to Yu Qianchou here, who would bear the wrath of the torture master? It was not them. Ziyi was already sitting on the cliff looking a little absent-minded. She was not worried about Yu Qianchou's life or death. To be honest, she did not have a good impression of Yu Qianchou's actions. The key was that Bai Chongqun had personally asked her to come out and assist Yu Qianchou. In the end, the person in charge died before the task was completed. How was she going to answer to Bai Chongqun? Yu Ji and the other generals were also absent-minded. Everyone felt like their lives were hanging by a thread, and they were about to bear the wrath of the torture master at any time. Just thinking about it made them feel a little terrified. However, their worries were unnecessary. To Yu Qianchou, this trip was just a daunting experience without any danger. Howl. A long howl that sounded like a ghost's wail came from the 9th Netherworld cave with the help of the wind. Then a green shadow shot out from the 9th Netherworld cave and headed straight for the opposite cliff. When Yu Qianchou was about to leave the cave, he suddenly retracted the black fire on his body and replaced it with the green fire. He also switched to an ordinary flying sword under his feet. The effect of the black fire was unknown, but it definitely had its unique power. Otherwise, it would not be ranked higher than the green fire. He decided to hide a trump card to be used at a critical moment. The flying sword pierced diagonally into the sky. When it flew past the cliff, the green shadow disappeared, and a figure jumped up from the flying sword. After a few somersaults in the air, he landed steadily among the crowd. His movements were very natural and unrestrained. The flying sword circled in the air and shot toward the person. With a clang, A cold light flashed and it returned to the scabbard on his back. He was actually flying on a sword in the 9th Netherworld cave. The crowd did not rejoice when they saw Xianxia. Instead they were shocked. Zi stood up abruptly and a look of joy flashed across her face. Xianxia looked at the crowd with a face full of smiles. He cupped his hands and said, "Sorry for making everyone wait." Xianxia apologizes. "Mister's back." One of the generals happily shouted. The crowd reacted and immediately burst into cheers. It was the kind of cheers that came from the bottom of their hearts. Yuji patted her chest and let out a sigh of relief. She waved her hand at the crowd and the cheers immediately stopped. She smiled and bowed. "Is Mr. well?" Xianxia looked at the crowd and laughed. "The 9th Netherworld cave truly lives up to its name. I almost lost my life in there. However, I was able to see the words left by my master in the cave, so this trip was not in vain. Sister-in-law has been worried. Fortunately there was no danger. Xianxia is well." Yuji's eyes lit up and she asked, "Did Mr. reach the bottom of the cave? Did you see the legendary 9th Netherworld door that leads to the Netherworld?" When the crowd heard this they all looked at Xianxia. Even Zi looked at him curiously. After all, that legendary place was not a place that anyone could go. It was good to listen and broaden their horizons. Xianxia smiled and shook his head. "I am ashamed. I tried everything but I could only reach the Netherworld Fire Sea. It was difficult to take another step. It was a pity that I did not see the legendary 9th Netherworld door." He thought that he was a low-profile person. A place that even old man Bai could not go. He would not be stupid enough to say that he went. That was purely looking for trouble. However, the crowd was envious. Yuji exclaimed, "It is not easy for Mr. to see the Netherworld Fire Sea. I have been guarding this place for so many years, but I have not been able to see it." "That's right, what did Mr. get?" Xianxia did not answer her question and smiled non-committally. He suddenly cupped his fists and said, "I have troubled sister-in-law this time. However, I still have important matters to attend to. I will bid farewell to sister-in-law and everyone here." Yuji was startled. Seeing that he was not willing to say it clearly, she did not ask further. She bowed with some disappointment. "Since Mr. has important matters to attend to, I will not force you to stay. I look forward to treating Mr. well next time." The ghost generals also bowed together. "Have a safe journey, Mr." Xianxia looked at Zi and nodded. The sword on his back was unsheathed and he turned into a stream of light and left. Zi lightly stamped her feet. Her delicate body flashed and she shot into the sky to chase after him, leaving behind a group of people to send him off. Zi caught up to Xianxia. After flying with him for a while, she suddenly asked, "Where are you going first?" Xianxia turned around to look at her. Seeing that this lass was still cold when she asked, it was obvious that she had not changed her impression of him. He could not be bothered to argue with this insensible lass and replied indifferently, "I am going to the Wu clan of the 4 great clans. They still owe me a large sum of money. I will collect the debt first." Chapter 355. "What? Collect debts?" Zi asked suspiciously. He thought she heard wrong. Xianxia nodded solemnly to show that she didn't hear wrong. He thought that it would be a waste to not bring a late-stage tribulation-passing cultivator as a bodyguard. Of course he wouldn't say this out loud. Ziyi's cold face immediately became even colder. It was as cold as ice. She said in an icy tone, "Xianxia, don't delay Senior Bai's instructions for your own personal matters. I didn't come out with you to collect debts." "Not collecting debts? Are you going to give me money?" Xianxia asked curiously. "Do I owe you money?" Zi said coldly. Xianxia asked again, "Then do you have money on you?" Zi was startled. "What money? What money are you talking about?" Xianxia countered with a question. "Spirit stones." Zi frowned. "What does it have to do with spirit stones?" "I don't have spirit stones." "Silly girl. Gullible." Xianxia thought for a moment and said angrily, "Don't you know that we need to spend money when we go out? My master gave us such an important mission. We have to travel around the cultivation world and there will be many places where we need to spend money. My master didn't give me money and I don't have money on me. You don't have money either. What about our food and lodging? Do you want me to accompany you to the cultivation world to beg for food? How are we going to work then? Do we really need spirit stones?" Zi didn't have much experience, so she asked unconfidently, There are many places to stay in the mountains. You're at the original infant stage, so you should be able to abstain from eating. It should be fine if you don't eat. Xianxia said, then what do we do when we find someone to work for us? Do we make them work and not pay them? If we don't know each other and I ask you to work for me for no reason, would you be willing to do it? Zi thought about it and said, no, unless you give me a good reason. That's it. Xianxia spread his hands and said, Master asked the two of us to deal with so many people, of course I have to find someone to help me. They don't care about reason, they only want money. They will only help you if you give them money. Do you think you can defeat all the experts in the cultivation world alone? Zi shook her head, indicating that she wouldn't be able to defeat so many people by herself. She then asked, then how many spirit stones do we need to carry out the task that Senior Bai instructed us to do? I need a lot of spirit stones. That's a huge number. Xianxia let out a deep sigh. He suddenly turned his head and asked, your master is a spirit-severing expert, so he must have a lot of money, right? Why don't you go to the South Sea Purple Bamboo Forest to get some spirit stones? We don't have any spirit stones, Zi said awkwardly. Xianxia was a little unhappy. Don't tell me you don't need spirit stones when you cultivate. You can't just use spirit pills, right? The Purple Bamboo Forest produces dense spirit qi every night. I've never used spirit stones when I cultivate, so I really don't have any, Zi explained. Xianxia's eyes lit up. He asked, the Purple Bamboo Forest produces spirit qi at night? Is it that magical? Why don't we go and dig a few? We might be able to use them as spirit stones. No, my master loves bamboo like his life. People call him Mr. Nongzhu. He won't allow anyone to touch a single bamboo. Zi waved her hand and bit her lip. Since collecting the debt is related to Senior Bai, I'll go with you to collect the debt. At this point Xianxia couldn't force her anymore. However, he remembered the matter about the purple bamboo in his heart and prepared to come back in the future. He let out a long sigh. Zi, I won't hide it from you. Even if we collect the debt this time, I'm sure we still need a lot of spirit stones. For the sake of my master, I'll have to trouble you with the spirit stones in the future. This is related to Senior Bai. I'll definitely do my best and not let Senior Bai down. Zi said with a determined expression. That's good, that's good. After this is over, I'll definitely report to Master about your dedication. Xianxia spoke in a serious tone, but in his heart he was thinking about how he could get the daughter of a deity transformation cultivator to help out with spirit stones. For example, she would be an expert in robbery. No need. It's my honor to work for Senior Bai, Zi said very politely. She didn't notice that she had fallen into Xianxia's trap. Yuji's territory was on the outskirts of the demon ghost region. While the two of them were talking, they had already passed through the gloomy world and left the demon ghost region. When the bright and beautiful sunlight suddenly appeared, Xianxia identified the direction and led Zi towards the Wu clan of the four major clans. This time he had received orders and could openly wander around the cultivation world. At least he didn't need to be afraid of being discovered by Changchun. After a few days of non-stop flying, the two of them finally arrived at the Wu clan's Hat Island. There were many shops and people coming and going. It was a very lively place in the cultivation world. Zi had stayed in the South Sea's Purple Bamboo Forest since she was a child. She rarely came out. The only reason she could come out was because her teacher had brought her to the mountains and lakes to pay a visit to an expert. She had never seen such a lively scene before. She could not help but look around curiously. As she walked, she accidentally distanced herself from Xianxia. After she came back to her senses, she quickly caught up. Zi rarely came into contact with the world. She had an extraordinary temperament. Coupled with her extraordinary appearance and eye-catching purple clothes, how could such a beauty not attract the attention of passers-by? Even Xianxia was constantly being looked at by people. Many of them looked at him with envy. They were all men. Xianxia understood what everyone was thinking. However, this girl's background was too powerful. Without confidence, no matter how delicious the meat was, it was not good to eat it. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know when one of his teeth was knocked out. He was a little afraid of the shrewd Nongzhu. Although Xianxia rarely showed himself in the cultivation world, he was quite famous. Many people had seen him. Naturally, people recognized him when he was on the road. Immediately, someone said softly, "Look at that person. Isn't that Xianxia?" "Hey, Huanzhen, that scum of the cultivation world, has some guts. He killed the son of the Daoist leader and still dares to parade around here. He must be tired of living. Stop talking. That guy is famous for being a lunatic. There is no one he doesn't dare to fight. Be careful that you will be killed by his Starflame fire spell, before the Daoist can find him. Those who could be here were all cultivators. Their ears and eyes were much sharper than mortals. As soon as the name of Xianxia was mentioned, it immediately caused a commotion. He was a famous person in the past. Not only did he kill the son of the Daoist sect's leader, but he also killed the leader of the Daoist sect, Ong Tsung. How many people in the cultivation world would have the guts to do that? Most of the people on the street consciously stood on both sides and made a path for them. They whispered to each other as if they were ready to watch the show. Xianxia heard a lot of people's conversation, but he pretended not to hear it. He brought an expert in the end stage of the God's test to go shopping. He was not afraid of anything. He was not afraid of anyone looking for trouble. Ziyi didn't know that she had become Xianxia's support. When she heard everyone whispering about Xianxia, she couldn't help but look at him a few more times. She didn't expect him to be so famous in the cultivation world. When they passed by the shop on Fuxian Island, the shop manager Wan Yuan also heard the news and stood in front of the shop. He was an acquaintance of Xianxia. When Xianxia saw him, he was stunned. He remembered that Wan Yuan had no enmity with him and had taken care of him before. He immediately nodded with respect. Wan Yuan shook his head and sighed. This disciple was actually quite good. He also felt that it was a pity that the sect lost such an outstanding disciple. When the two of them walked to the Gulu residence and were about to enter, they saw a waiter wearing the Wu clan's clothing running out. When he saw Xianxia, he bowed and called out, "Mr. Yu." After that, a flying sword flew out of the storage bag and he quickly flew towards the Wu clan. Was he going to report? Xianxia sneered and glanced at him. He led Ziyi in. The shopkeeper heard the news and walked over quickly. He bowed and said, "Mr. Yu has arrived. Please go to the private room upstairs." The Wu clan was looking for Xianxia everywhere. How could he dare to neglect him? "I have a distinguished guest. Bring me the best dishes." Xianxia said bluntly and went upstairs with Ziyi. The customers downstairs all watched as he went upstairs. The clean and tidy private room was open to receive the guests. The shopkeeper personally welcomed the two of them in and asked if they had any special requests. Xianxia said to Ziyi, who was looking around curiously, "Ziyi, order whatever you want to eat. It'll be a waste if we don't eat. Someone will treat us later. We don't have to pay for it." This guy's tone was unkind. The shopkeeper's expression changed. He smiled awkwardly and said, "You don't have to pay for it. As long as our shop has it, order whatever you want." Before he could finish his words, there was a commotion coming from below. Someone laughed and said, "Once this lunatic appears, there will be a show to watch immediately. This is great." A group of people ignored the Wu clansman's obstruction and forcefully rushed up. The leader was the manager of Daoist's shop on Hat Island, Yi Haiping. He had met Xianxia before, so they knew each other. As soon as he entered the private room, he shouted at Xianxia, "Xianxia, you finally show your face. Don't even think about running away today." The shopkeeper's expression changed. He said coldly, "Manager Yi, what do you mean? You brought people to break into my Gulu house. Don't you think you have no respect for the Wu clan?" "Shopkeeper Wu, we Daoist sect have offended you today. We will come to apologize another day. This man killed many of our disciples. We can't let him go today no matter what." Yi Haiping cupped his fist and said, "What a joke." Xianxia sneered and sat down. He looked at Yi Haiping and said disdainfully, "Yi Haiping, what do you think of your cultivation compared to Zhou Xian's? He tried to escape when he saw me, but you guys dare to say that you won't let me go? Aren't you overestimating yourselves?" His cultivation was no longer the same as it used to be. He had reached the original infant stage. Most of the people from Daoist sect were at the core formation stage. Only Yi Haiping's cultivation was higher than his. However, Yi Haiping's cultivation was no higher than the passing calamity stage. Otherwise, he wouldn't be the manager of this shop. Xianxia's fire spell was extremely powerful. He didn't even care about the passing calamity stage. Why would he be afraid of a group of people like this? Plus, he had Ziyi, who was at the final stage of the passing calamity stage. Chapter 356. In fact, even if Yu Qianqiu didn't say it, Yi Haiping knew that they were at a disadvantage. In the battle outside the Hundred Flowers Valley, Yu Qianqiu single-handedly killed several Deluo sect nascent soul disciples. Even the sect master's only son died at his hands. He even forced elder Zhou Xian to retreat. Yu Qianqiu's Starflame fire art became famous after that battle. Now that their cultivation was far inferior to those of the same sect, how could they take advantage of the situation? However, Yu Qianqiu's appearance on Hat Island had attracted everyone's attention. As the representative of Deluo sect on Hat Island, he had no choice but to come even if he knew he was no match for Yu Qianqiu. If he retreated, not only would the world of cultivation laugh at him, the Deluo sect master would be the first to punish him. The ashen-faced Yi Haiping was in a dilemma when the sound of hurried footsteps came from downstairs. Wuxia personally came with a smile on his face and a few elders. But when he saw Yi Haiping and his people blocking the door, his face immediately sank and he said, "What is the meaning of this?" The innkeeper hurriedly bowed and explained the whole story from beginning to end. Wuxia immediately said in a deep voice, "Manager Yi, your Deluo sect is indeed a large sect, but the world of cultivation has its own rules. How dare you be so arrogant? Do you think the four great clans are easy to bully? Yi Haiping, are your actions today representing the Deluo sect?" Yi Haiping's expression was uncertain. He suddenly cupped his fists and said, "I, Yi Haiping, cannot represent the entire Deluo sect, nor do I dare to bully the four great clans. Wu family head, I have offended you today. Let me report this matter to the sect first. Farewell." Without another word, he turned around and left, quickly leading the group of disciples downstairs. In fact, Wuxiai's arrival gave him a chance to step down. When he reported to the sect, he could say that because the Wu clan's clan head, one of the four great clans, had interfered, he could naturally avoid punishment. He could also avoid direct conflict with Yu Qianqiu. "I won't send you off." Wuxia coldly snorted, expressing his dissatisfaction. When he turned around to look at Yu Qianqiu, a smile once again appeared on his face. When he saw the extraordinarily beautiful Zi, he couldn't help but frown. He didn't know what relationship she had with Yu Qianqiu, and he thought of his own granddaughter. However, he still smiled and said, "Yu Qianqiu, you really made it easy for our Wu clan to find you. Previously it was really a misunderstanding. Please don't take it to heart." Yu Qianqiu raised an eyebrow and sneered, "Let's not talk about this now. I'm hungry. If you have anything to say, you can talk after you're full." Good. You should talk after you're full. Bring out the best wine and dishes." Wuxia ordered the shopkeeper beside him. After the shopkeeper left, he sat in front of Yu Qianqiu and kept smiling. He didn't know what to say. Finally, he looked at Zi and nodded with a smile. "This young lady's cultivation is obviously higher than mine. I'm afraid she is an expert at the final stage of the crossing calamity stage. However, she looks unfamiliar. May I know which sect she is from?" Ever since there were many people, Ziyi's expression hadn't changed at all in front of outsiders. She hadn't opened her mouth to speak. Now that Wuxia asked her, she looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Is this the person who owes you money?" This question was a bit too direct and didn't beat around the bush at all. Wuxia, who was pouring himself a cup of tea, choked when he heard this. He forcefully swallowed the tea in his mouth and coughed repeatedly as he looked at Yu Qianqiu. He thought, did this brat bring an expert here to collect the debt? Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu cheered in his heart. It was really great to have this stubborn girl here. He wanted to use Old Man Bai's name to suppress Old Man Bai's juniors and make it easier for him to earn money. However, if Old Man Bai found out, he didn't know what the consequences would be. He didn't know what to say. Why didn't he think of using this girl? Old Man Bai definitely wouldn't do anything to this girl. He had an idea in his heart, but on the surface he said nonchalantly, "Let's talk after eating." As expected, Zi frowned slightly and said, "Yu Qianqiu, is your food more important or what Old Man Bai told us more important?" As soon as the words Old Man Bai came out, Wuxia and the four elders behind him changed their expressions. Wuxia couldn't sit still anymore. He jumped up and asked, "Is the Old Man Bai you mentioned my ancestor?" Ziyi's expression was indifferent. She said straightforwardly, "I don't know you nor do I know your ancestor." Wuxia was speechless. He looked at Yu Qianqiu anxiously. Yu Qianqiu understood their feelings. Rubbing his hands together, he explained embarrassedly, "She's the disciple of your ancestor's best friend. Her master is also an incredible figure." Wuxia and the others were shocked. Bai Changchun was a soul formation final stage expert. His friend would not be an ordinary person. No wonder this girl looked so young but had the cultivation of tribulation final stage. For a moment Wuxia and the four elders stood up and bowed to Zi. They seemed a little reserved. Zi looked at Xianxia in confusion and said, "What's going on? Old Man Bai's surname is Bai and their surname is Wu. Why would they call Old Man Bai ancestor? Besides, I never heard my master say that Old Man Bai has a son outside. Even if it's true as Old Man Bai's direct disciple, how can you ask Old Man Bai's descendant for money?" Xianxia was Old Man Bai's direct disciple? This news was no less than a heavy bomb. Wuxia and the others were shocked. Although they didn't know whether it was true or not, it was enough to stun them. Enough. Saying this was enough to collect the debt. Xianxia held back the joy in his heart. He glanced at Wuxia and the others and said awkwardly, "That, Zi, don't mention my master casually in the future. My master doesn't want me to use his name to do things." "Is this Old Man Bai's idea?" Zi frowned and said unhappily, "Why didn't you say so earlier?" The private room immediately quieted down. Only the sound of Xianxia drinking tea could be heard. Not long after, the manager and the waiters of Gulu House filled the table with food and wine. After the food and wine were served, the manager also found that the atmosphere was a little strange. He looked at the family head with an inquiring look. Wuxia waved his hand and asked them to leave. After they left, an elder closed the door with a serious face. Xianxia pretended to be embarrassed to face Ziyi's blaming eyes. He picked up the chopsticks and buried himself in the food. Just like he said if there was anything they could talk after they were full. Zi saw him eat so much that he forgot himself. She looked at the delicious dishes on the table and even picked up her chopsticks to taste them carefully. Wuxia and the others stood aside silently. They didn't know what to say. Especially Wuxia, thinking of the relationship between his granddaughter and Xianxia, his mind was in a mess. According to the relationship between him and his granddaughter, he should be his grandson-in-law. If he was really the direct disciple of Old Man Bai, then what about the seniority?